Chapter 12:15. Urahara Kasuk's old face turned green, and even because of excessive suppression, there were red blood stains on both sides of his eyes. There was a touch of anger in his chest. Obviously, he was very angry with Dustless's words. His eyes were red, as if they could bleed at any time. Kasuk, are you okay? Floating to Urahara Kasuk's side, Four Maple Court's Yi asked softly. At the same time, she fiercely glanced at the innocent Dustless. She understood Urahara Kasuk's feelings quite well. Don't worry, it doesn't matter. He's very tough, he won't die from anger. Wuchen smiled awkwardly. It was very casual, but it was full of schadenfreude. It was obvious that he wanted Urahara Kasuk to be angered to death. In fact, Urahara Kasuk was so angry that it was reasonable. The culprit who molested Four Maple Court's Yi was right in front of him. Urahara Kasuk wanted to swallow him alive, but because of the other party's identity, he couldn't do it. Just thinking about it, Urahara Kasuk couldn't help but get angry. His perennially calm heart was gradually stimulated by Dustless's frivolity. Everyone had emotions. Urahara Kasuk was optimistic by nature, but this didn't mean that he wouldn't get angry. On the contrary, some good-tempered people were very scary when they got angry. What? Do you want to kill me, the Spirit King? Sure, but do you dare? I'll just stand here and don't move. If you want to kill me, you can do it. But how many times do you think Soul Society, the modern world, and Hueco Mundo can withstand a heavy blow like that just now? Dustless had a smirk on his face, and his tone was extremely frivolous. Urahara Kasuk was angry, but didn't dare to say anything. You're too arrogant. Four Maple Courtyard Yi cried out in a lovely voice. Immediately, her body turned into a storm as she charged over. Her seemingly tender fist was filled with a powerful force that could flatten a large mountain. Come on. Seeing this, Dustless didn't dodge. His body stood calmly in the sky, quietly waiting for Four Maple Court's fierce attack. Boom, boom, boom. The space around Dustless rumbled violently. The violent impact was like an endless sea, swallowing up the distant mountains in the blink of an eye. Ka. Several mountains were razed to the ground one after another. Only Dustless was unscathed. Yi of the Four Maple Court deliberately avoided Dustless's face and punched the mountain behind him, as if he was venting his depression and anger. There was nothing more depressing than the current situation. The enemy was right in front of you, mocking and ridiculing you, but you couldn't do anything about it. Being controlled by the enemy made you feel extremely conflicted. Dustless seized such a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to rub salt into Urahara Kasuk's wounds. He was extremely disdainful of such a person. It seems like it's just as Shiju said. You're the one who killed all the captains. Yi of the Four Maple Court's face gradually became ferocious. In the blink of an eye, she seemed to have turned into a tigress, with violent killing intent accumulating all over her body. Keikibaya and her were best friends. Many of the abilities of the strong were taught by Yi of the Four Maple Court. Naturally, they had an inseparable relationship. It could barely be considered a master-disciple relationship. Tizkta. You four aristocratic families are the most loyal to the Spirit King. Now you want to betray me? Dustless asked with a smile, but his voice made people shudder. Now I'm the head captain of Soul Society. With an order, your Four Maple Court will be swept into the garbage heap of history. Are you threatening me? Yi of the Four Maple Court was expressionless, but her words made the void instantly cold. Hearing this, Dustless was not moved. His eyes were dead. The threat of Yi of the Four Maple Court was as funny as Jillian threatening Vasto Lord. It was just self-deception. Dustless didn't care about her at all. This is not a threat, but an order. If you resist me, your family will be flattened immediately. I heard that you have a very young brother. If something bad happens to him, the Four Maple Court will have no successor. Dustless said with a smile. The arc raised high was very despicable. Full of evil fun, he said. Immediately kill the man behind you, Urahara Kasuk. Otherwise the Four Maple Court. The sinister laughter fell into Urahara Kasuk's ears. It was more terrifying than the devil. You're the most beautiful. Yi of the Four Maple Court rolled his eyes and sneered. The other aristocrats of Soul Society won't let you do whatever you want. You'd better. Dustless suddenly raised his right hand, condensing a golden flash ball. It was very bright and aimed at the distant sky. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The light shot out from his fingertips and went straight to the distant buildings. The destructive light beam disappeared in a flash. Boom boom boom. On the residence of the Four-Maple Court, a large number of flames appeared. A huge fireball rose into the sky. All the people who were caught in it were doomed to die tragically. I have a bad habit. I hate people who overestimate themselves the most when they threaten me. In that case, a good thing might turn into a bad thing. Let's talk about the current situation. Dustless sneered eerily. His tone was creepy and frightening. The blood-red light beam made Yi of the Four-Maple Court unable to raise a chill. It was as if any of her thoughts would be suppressed. Chapter 12:16. This guy is just scaring me. I must not back down in fear, or the situation will only continue to be unfavorable to me. Four-Maple Court Yi insisted indifferently. She stared at Dustless with an unfriendly murderous look on her face. She immediately shouted coldly, "Now get out of here. If you dare to appear in front of me again, I can tell you clearly that even if the whole world is destroyed, I will drag you down with me." These words were sonorous and forceful, like rolling thunder that lingered in Wuchen's ears and did not disperse for a long time. However, Dustless just smiled, and his head suddenly moved forward a little. "Oh, you smell a lot better. Could it be that Miss Yi has taken a bath more often? This is really..." Without waiting for Dustless's voice to completely fall, a biting cold attack came head-on. Four-Maple Court Yi, who couldn't bear it anymore, blasted toward him with a destructive impact. Boom boom boom. The silver wave came head-on, targeting Dustless's vital part. "It's impossible for you to injure me with such a weak attack." Dustless shook his head and sighed. He waved gently, and a wave of spiritual pressure came out. The whole world suddenly shook. Under the dense golden wave, Four-Maple Court Yi's fist wind was easily annihilated. She was as weak as a willow branch and could only go with the flow. "You want me to go? This is Soul Society, my territory." "Oh no, I have the identity of Spirit King now. Hueco Mundo, the modern world, and Soul Society are all my territory." "You." Four-Maple Court Yi was so angry that her teeth were creaking. Frankly speaking, her careless personality was not suitable to come in contact with a cunning person like Dustless. She would only suffer losses. But even if she knew her own problem, looking at this extremely annoying face, Four-Maple Court Yi still couldn't help but want to go up and beat him up to vent her anger. "It's you guys who should go." Dustless sneered. This guy didn't seem to understand each other's position. The ones who should get out of here should be her and Urahara Kasuk. "You have guts." Yi of the Four-Maple Court glared fiercely at Dustless, turned around and walked towards Kasuk Urahara. It seemed that he wanted to help him leave. "Stop right there." Seeing this scene, Dustless didn't know why, but a nameless fire splashed in his heart. The moment Four-Maple Court's Yi was about to touch Urahara Kasuk, it burned all his reason, and he immediately snorted coldly. "I said to let you go. Urahara Kasuk, stay here." Dustless sneered again and again, his killing intent bursting out as he said, "He won't kill me? But I want to kill him." For a dangerous person like Urahara Kasuk, Dustless naturally wouldn't let him go. Aizen Sosuke was a poisonous snake hiding in the dark, and Urahara Kasuk was also a hungry wolf that ate people without spitting out the bones. They would either become allies or completely send him to heaven. Yi of the Four-Maple Court resolutely stood in front of Urahara Kasuk. "I gave you a chance, but you don't know what's good for you." Dustless suddenly turned his head strangely and stared at the Four-Maple Court's place. The majestic Ryatsu in his body was like an unstoppable flash flood. "Stop right there." Sensing the density of Ryatsu in Dustless's body, Yi of the Four-Maple Court's face changed greatly and hurriedly warned, "If you dare to attack the Four-Maple Court's family, I will fight you to the death, and it will be forever." Heido number 88 Flying Dragon Strikes Thief. Before Yi of the Four-Maple Court's voice fell, the explosion engulfed the entire Four-Maple Court's residence. Dustless deliberately avoided the Four-Maple Court's residence, and only destroyed a small part of it. Since Yi of the Four Maple Court didn't know what's good for him, Dustless naturally wouldn't be merciful. Boom, boom, boom. The former magnificent Four Maple Court's residence turned into a pile of debris, and the Four Maple Court's residence became history. Go to hell. The ferocious Four Maple Court's Yi suddenly rushed over. His body was full of dense flashes, and his strength was enough to easily dismember and smash a 100-ton mountain. I gave you a chance, but you didn't cherish it, and now you're angry because you missed it? Dustless asked flatly. His tone was as if it was a trivial matter not worth mentioning. The hundreds of lives of the Four Maple Court's family were worthless in his eyes. There was no value to be moved. Boom, boom, boom. Dustless was hit by the absolute heavy blow, but what was disappointing was that he didn't have the most basic reaction. He continued to stand in place as if nothing had happened. In front of him was Yi of the Four Maple Court with a dazed face. The difference between us is too great. You're not enough to be my opponent. After saying that, the silent repulsive force in Dustless's body gushed out, and Yi of the Four Maple Court, who was caught off guard, was suddenly sent flying. Shinra Tensei. A black shadow was simply bounced away, and it disappeared in a flash until it reached the sky hundreds of meters away. Yi of the Four Maple Court barely stabilized his body, and he was shocked to find that the distance between him and Dustless was unreachable. You're next. With a chuckle full of hostility, Dustless disappeared. It was a simple straight-line movement, but because of the excessive speed, it gave people the illusion of crossing through layers of space. Pucci. Urahara Kasuke suddenly felt an incomparable pain in his abdomen, and a scorching light burned his whole body. He turned his head abruptly and saw Dustless with a deathly still face. The game is over. Chapter 12-17. Urahara Kasuke's vitality drained rapidly, blood overflowed from the corner of his mouth, and the stinging pain all over his body made it difficult for him to fight. His mind was in a trance. Looking at the face close at hand, Urahara Kasuke smiled bitterly and said self-deprecatingly, I came full of confidence, but I returned heartlessly in failure. The world is impermanent. Urahara Kasuke sighed with a tone of powerlessness and relief. He was surprised to find that he was relaxed, and he didn't have to live like before. Very tired, very tired, very tired. As a spirit king, you should be. The one who overrides all things in the world is called a spirit king. Dustless saw through Urahara Kasuke's inner thoughts in an instant, and said coldly, You want me to serve others? Is there something wrong with your head? As the spirit king, everything in the world should submit to me, and not the other way around. Dustless said coldly, and the Kusanagi sword also turned into light, and the powerless Urahara Kasuke fell into the void. He pointed the tip of his thumb at Urahara Kasuke, and a pink light ball flew out. Hato 54 Waste Flame. Several circular flames swept out, and in the blink of an eye, Urahara Kasuke was swallowed. Boom boom boom. The corpse emitted a large flame, and Urahara Kasuke was completely erased. Not even the residue of the corpse was left, and he disappeared forever. Kasuke. Seeing such a scene, Four Maple Court's Yi felt as if she was struck by lightning. Looking at the body that disappeared with the wind, she instinctively grabbed towards the sky in despair. I want to kill you. Four Maple Court's Yi's eyes were red. Her best friend left her, and her heart was in pain as if it was being torn apart by someone's bare hands. You should thank me, Dustless said with a gentle smile. For Urahara Kasuke, living is a kind of pain. Having a nightmarish enemy, torturing and eating his internal organs every day, is worse than death. Now that he has stepped into heaven, he should be living very comfortably. For some people, death is also a kind of relief. Instant open. The amazing Ryatsu exploded, and Four Maple Court's Yi roared crazily, rolling up a storm. Asking for a snub, Dustless shook his head, and a light flashed in his eyes. Divine might. In front of the Four Maple Court's Yi, the void shifted as if he had arrived in the universe. The surrounding space was extremely fragile, and was occupied by a giant whirlpool. The suction force was infinitely magnified, and the Four Maple Court's Yi was sucked in. I'm done. Stretching his body, Dustless looked at the devastated Soul Society. The great voids were wreaking havoc in quiet Soul Society, and the death gods were wailing, but Dustless was indifferent, as if nothing had happened. Ka ka ka. The void distorted, and a huge crescent-shaped hole appeared. This Ryatsu is. Ayaya, it's finally here, Sosuke Aizen. Dustless looked up and saw a few figures flashing in the dark space. He looked very relaxed, as he only needed to take care of these people in front of him. Head Captain, it's great that you're still alive. Aizen Sosuke raised his eyebrows and said with emotion. The Zanpakuto's rebel Shinigami's combat power has greatly decreased. It seems that choosing this time to attack was the right choice, just like what I planned. Just like what you planned? Why are you so proud of yourself, Sosuke Aizen? Dustless looked at the narcissist with disdain and sneered. So, are they part of your plan? Them. Hearing this, Sosuke Aizen frowned and looked at Dustless in confusion. Puchi. Puchi. Suddenly, a painful howl came from the dark space behind him. Sosuke Aizen turned his head and saw a scene that made him stunned. Hellable took advantage of the situation to attack Aizen's subordinates, and easily ended the lives of several Arancers. Even Stark, who was caught off guard, was cut in half. Okiura was slightly better. He was vigilant enough. Even though he had lost an arm, it could still grow back. Hellable, give me an explanation. Sosuke Aizen asked with a hoarse voice. He didn't expect that his most loyal subordinate, who was even more loyal than Okiura, would be attacked. Look at you, this isn't what you expected. Ignoring Sosuke Aizen's black face, Dustless's laughter was full of ridicule and disdain. Don't you understand? Her libel is one of my people. Damn it. This sentence made Sosuke Aizen very angry. Although he only used Hellable as a tool, it was inexplicable to be played by a tool. Anyone would be angry. A mere Vasto Lord dares to betray me. Aizen's eyes were so cold that no one dared to look directly at him. His murderous aura was thick. Pay attention, I'm talking about them, not Hellable alone. Dustless reminded him in a friendly manner. Who else is there? Aizen Soki looked around in surprise. Me too, Captain Aizen. A shadow quickly flew over and stabbed Sosuke Aizen's back with his Zanpakuto. Behind you, Aizen-sama. Seeing this scene, the most loyal dog, East Sendai, quickly shouted. Ikamaru-jin, you dare to betray Aizen-sama? Puchi. The Zanpakuto's sharp edge cut Sosuke Aizen's stomach open. And because Ikamaru-jin's Zanpakuto had the characteristic of venom, it instantly melted Sosuke Aizen's cells. A big hole was formed in his chest, much bigger than a human's head. You bastards. Sosuke Aizen's eyes were about to burst. He was like an angry lion, roaring loudly. However, in Dustless's eyes, it was particularly sad. His fingertips glowed faintly as he was about to completely crush Sosuke Aizen. Chapter 12-18. On Aizen Sosuke's chest, a blue sphere was clearly visible, pulsating with a mysterious luster, very beautiful. The mysterious light was like a black hole, attracting the eyes of humans and making them unable to move away. Tihetis. What a pity if I cared about you before, but now forget it. Indifferently glancing at the Azure Hogyoku, Wu Chen's heart was extremely calm, without the slightest desire. After swallowing the Spirit King, this kind of thing was dispensable to him, without the slightest attraction. In fact, there was nothing in this world that could move Dustless. You two bastards, I will not let you go. I hate traitors the most in my life. Anyone who betrays me must die. Aizen Sosuke stared fiercely at Haribel and Ikamaru-jin. Finally, his eyes were fixed on Ikamaru-jin, with fire in his eyes. You two go and stall that guy for me. Even though there was a big hole in his abdomen, Aizen Sosuke was still safe and sound. He winked at East Sensei and Okiura. The implication was that he ordered them to stall Dustless for the time being. Wait for me, traitor. East Sensei glared at Ikamaru-jin, and went straight away. Idiot, I changed Ikamaru-jin's memory before. He is now my loyal dog, and you Aizen changed your mind. You are his enemy. Dustless sneered, looking at Ikamaru-jin's expressionless face. He gave him a don't worry look. Obviously he was saying, have a safe trip. Whoosh whoosh, two sharp whistling sounds came. Dustless looked at them. The speed was as fast as lightning, almost the speed of light, but Dustless could see it clearly. Although Ise-sensei and Okuyura's strength increased greatly after the Hogyoku's strengthening, they were still average. Ise-sensei's green eyes stared at Dustless's light after receiving the power of the Hogyoku. He pulled out his Zanpakuto, and his Ryatsu surged and whispered. No matter what happened in the past, everything will end here. Puchi! A cold silver light descended from the sky. Before Dong Xian Yao could finish his sentence, he was mercilessly sliced into two. You unkillable cockroach, you've been caught by me several times. This time you're finally going to die, Dustless said in disgust. He had killed this eyesore of a bug many times. Now it was finally going to die. Then you can die too. A cold light came from behind. Dustless looked back leisurely, and what he saw was Okuyura and his Zanpakuto that could cut a mountain. Clang. The cold light crashed into Dustless's hand, and was easily caught by him. Ignoring Okuyura's stunned gaze, he swung his blade. Chapter 12:19. Aizen's face turned green. He was counting on Okuyura and Ise-sensei to stall for time, but he didn't expect Dustless to be able to defeat him so easily. How is this a battle? He's clearly toying with a child. This guy's dimension is far stronger than mine. Although I've fused perfectly with Hogyoku, it's still a mystery whether I can defeat him or not. Sosuke Aizen looked at Dustless, who was slowly walking towards them. His mind was spinning rapidly. He even ignored Jin and Hellable, who were beside him. At the same time, the wound on his abdomen was instantly healed by Hogyoku. Strike first and gain the upper hand. Aizen's Ryatsu erupted from his body as he arrived behind Dustless in an instant, and swung his Zanpakuto. Clang clang clang. The sound of metal colliding resounded through the endless void. Dustless's body. Aizen felt his arm almost break. This is not a human's head. It's clearly a lump of metal. Are you trying to tickle me with your strength? Dustless touched his forehead and said uninterestedly. He immediately took out the star badge hidden in his chest, and a shiny tachi appeared in his hand. You bastard! Aizen's face darkened as he stared at Dustless ferociously. He looked at the fiery red star badge, and suddenly felt that something was wrong. This temperature, this special Ryatsu, it seems to be the Ryujin Jaka of head Captain Yamamoto. Why is it in your hand? Aizen Sosuke's pupils shrank. Looking at Dustless's smirk, his heart skipped a beat, suddenly realizing that something was wrong. Titati. Since you've been my dog for so many years, I'll reluctantly tell you the truth. I was the one who took the ability of the head captain's Zanpakuto. I was the one who pretended to be the Hogyoku and controlled you. I was also the one who instigated you to kill the head captain. Wu Chen's tone was very casual, but every time he said a word, Aizen's face would turn ugly until it turned into the color of a pig's liver. He didn't expect that the Hogyoku's consciousness was Dustless. He was so angry that he clenched his fists. His whole body was filled with a dangerous aura that could destroy the world. Today either you die or I die. Aizen Sosuke roared, then turned into a cannonball and rushed over. The two were separated by a few hundred meters, but Sosuke Aizen jumped through space to kill him. Zanpakuto stabbed Dustless's eyes. Even after obtaining the Hogyoku, he was still afraid of that terrifying dojutsu. Wu Chen opened his eyes slightly, and an irregular black flame flashed through his eyes. He murmured, Amaterasu. A small flame was burning in Aizen's abdomen, its heat making people retreat. The black light seemed to come from the depths of hell, and no one dared to underestimate it. Ah, black fire? Where did it come from? The fire spread all over Aizen's body. He screamed in pain, as if he regretted living in this world. He was full of despair for the future. What made Aizen's heart jump was that the fire couldn't be extinguished. Testeti, since you're in so much pain, I'll let you go. I'm such a kind person. I can't bear to see others in pain. Dustless smiled cunningly. The air around him quickly froze. You want to loot a burning house? Aizen, who was wrapped in flames, was shocked and angry. He shouted, You think you can kill me with such a cheap trick? You're underestimating me. Die. Aizen Sosuke, who was wrapped in Amaterasu, released his Ryatsu. Endless energy flowed out of the Hogyoku. Enduring the pain of being burned, Aizen Sosuke sneered. Whole of 96 cremation. Boom boom boom. The azure blue sky turned fiery red. The blade-shaped flame rose from the ground, wanting to tear Dustless apart. Fireflies light. Lowering his head calmly, Wuchen looked down at the flaming saber light rising from the ground. Wuchen didn't dodge, and his body simply spurted out more blazing Ryatsu. Benkai, remnant flame Tachi. The charred Tachi is steaming, and he calmly stares at the huge flaming Tachi. Wuchen raises the Tachi in his hand, and a gust of wind blows out. Everything is over. Remnant flame Tachi, north, ashes of heaven and earth. The moment the saber aura came into contact with cremation, it instantly killed it. Everything turned into nothingness. The huge saber body was instantly vaporized by the saber aura. Everything returned to nothingness. Only Aizen, who was in a daze, was left in this vast world. Is this the power of Ryujinjaka? Yamamoto is called the strongest Shinigami in 1,000 years. No, his title has been replaced by this man. Staring at Dustless, Aizen Sosuke smiled slyly. He looked extremely despicable and sinister. Since he couldn't win by fair means, he could only resort to trickery. The winner was king, and the loser was a bandit. History was written by the winner, and the process didn't matter. After all, his opponent was a godlike player. Chapter 12:20. Zenka no Tachi's high temperature spread like a tide. The entire Soul Society was like a giant steamer. The abnormal temperature made the water in everyone's body evaporate rapidly. This guy. Aizen Sosuke's face was ashen as he felt the water in his body evaporating rapidly. His face couldn't help collapsing. Aizen Sosuke never dreamed of Dustless's overwhelming spiritual pressure. Why can I devour Hogyoku and this guy can still cheat? Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Aizen Sosuke saw a fiery red shadow pouncing at him and retreated a step. Kakaka. However, this was completely ineffective against Dustless. In an instant, he saw through Aizen Sosuke's nature and circled around him with a tricky force. He raised his sword and swept it down. Boom boom boom. Aizen Sosuke was caught off guard. Faced with Dustless's absolute prediction ability, he could only passively take a beating. All his moves were seen through. Boom. Aizen Sosuke's body splashed with a large amount of fire. The hot and violent spiritual pressure crushed half of his body and burned him until only half was left. Gulp. Aizen Sosuke was like a monster. His body emitted waves of spiritual pressure as a brand new body condensed. Because Dustless was too strong, he felt fear. The power of the Hogyoku was completely activated. Aizen Sosuke completed his first evolution. Boom boom boom. Purple light swept across the world. The spiritual pressure was as dense as water. The entire sky trembled. The spiritual pressure was unprecedentedly violent. Kakaka. At the same time, the sky cracked and a young figure came out. He had orange hair and a firm gaze. Shinozaki Ichigo? You didn't die? After seeing the newcomer, Dustless muttered. He was somewhat surprised. He thought this undying cockroach was killed by the great voids of Hueco Mundo. He didn't expect him to live until now. What a surprise, Shinozaki Ichigo. Aizen Sosuke's spiritual pressure stopped erupting. His appearance was completely different from before. He was wrapped in a white shell that was extremely hard, similar to Void's steel skin. Just like Dustless back then. Ayaya. It seems to be very powerful. Dustless narrowed his eyes and said with a smile. Obviously, he didn't take Aizen Sosuke seriously. Aizen Sosuke snorted. He could hear Dustless's sarcasm and mockery. When he was about to swing his sword, Shinozaki Ichigo's words angered him. Head captain, leave him to me. Holding the Zanpakuto tightly, Shinozaki Ichigo said with bright eyes. Of course I'd love to. Dustless nodded like a chicken pecking at rice. He looked at Aizen Sosuke with a mocking expression. His old face was full of anger. He was obviously angered by Ichigo's words. What do you mean by leaving it to me? How dare an ant like you be so arrogant? A mere human dares to boast shamelessly? Aizen sneered, but what happened next stunned him. Boom boom boom. The surface of Shinozaki Ichigo's skin was covered with dark red spiritual pressure, and his entire appearance changed. He was wearing a bull mask. His body emitted a monstrous spiritual pressure that turned into an invisible gravity domain. The entire sky shook, and the evil spiritual pressure that was filled with the smell of blood was even stronger than Vasto Lord's great void. He can control this form, that's not bad. It seems that even if no one helps him, this kid's protagonist aura can still help him increase his strength without limit. Wuchen sighed with emotion as he looked at Shinozaki Ichigo. His heartbeat of boredom swept away. The person in front of him was completely different from before. His short orange hair had grown long and danced in the wind, hanging down to his waist. There was a black hole in his chest, and in an instant there were black stripe marks all around. Shinozaki Ichigo was completely void, but he didn't lose his consciousness. This is my power now. Seeing Dustless and Aizen's calm face, Shinozaki Ichigo was full of confidence and whispered, "As long as I use a little force, I can. As long as I use a little force, you won't even have a skeleton left." Before Shinozaki Ichigo finished speaking, Aizen instantly teleported behind Shinozaki Ichigo and swung his Zanpakuto, and a visible ripple instantly shattered Shinozaki Ichigo. "Are you surprised?" "That's right, as a human, you have the same power as me. To be honest, I admire your tenacity, but..." Aizen's tone was full of disdain, and he said coldly, "But an idiot will always be an idiot. With your level, even if you train for a few more decades, you will only be able to crawl and tremble in front of me, and even... Shinozaki Ichigo is trash, but you are also trash." A ghostly voice sounded behind Aizen, and that emotionless tone made Aizen's hair stand on end. He instantly turned around, but what he got was a ruthless and cruel slash. Pucci. The miserable Aizen Sosuke and Shinozaki Ichigo also suffered the same fate. They were directly cut in half by Dustless, and their bodies began to fall slowly. Looking at Dustless in the sky, Aizen was stunned. He had evolved with the help of the Hogyoku, so how could he be killed in one hit? It was as unbelievable as a dream. He had the Hogyoku, but he was killed in one hit, which was a huge blow to Aizen. Chapter 12:21. Aizen's pupils widened to the largest extent in his life. His dismembered body emitted a special reiatsu that restored his fragmented body. His vitality is really tenacious. There were some unexpected ripples splashing in his pupils. Wuchen returned to calmness once again, and maintained his tranquility. "Why is this guy so strong? I can't accept this." Aizen Sosuke was filled with flames. In his rage, he erupted with explosive power, distorting the space around him and turning it into fragments. He spent so much effort, but in the end he was brutally killed. Dustless's indifference to the common people, and the way he looked at Aizen as if he was an ant, was a heavy blow to Aizen. Pucci. Aizen clenched his fists so tightly that blood flowed out of his palms. His fingers dug deep into his flesh. A great amount of anger and unwillingness drove his reason. His mind turned upside down as if it was about to explode. Aizen's body was filled with ferocity like a fierce beast. "If I can't even defeat this guy, how can I kill the Soul King? How can I kill the Zero Squad?" Aizen Sosuke roared in a low and hoarse voice. His tone carried a hint of madness, as if he was facing death. "Aizen Sosuke, I thought you had high standards, but now I find that I was too naive. You're just an ordinary person." Dustless shook his head with a hopeless expression. "What do you mean?" Noticing Dustless's strange state, Aizen asked with an ugly expression. "In the end, the so-called Spirit King is just a product created by Soul Society. A small character not worth mentioning." Dustless continued. "The Soul King is the foundation that stabilizes all living things. If the Soul King collapses, the world will disappear. If the Soul King dies, all living things will be buried with him. If not, it's the opposite." Aizen frowned and asked in a hoarse voice, "What do you mean? You don't know?" Hearing this, a look of disdain flashed across Dustless's brows. He smiled and said, "In other words, killing the Spirit King is equivalent to killing any member of the myriad of living beings. You're no exception. In simpler words, killing the Soul King is the same as killing yourself." You're trying to mislead the public with your lies. Aizen sneered disdainfully. That's why I said you're ignorant. You think you know everything? What are you dreaming about? At the end of the day, you're just a chess piece of mine. Glancing at Aizen Sosuke, Dustless gradually lost interest and said coldly, You have an immortal body, and you can obtain unlimited Ryatsu. It must be from Hogyoku. As long as you destroy it, you will return to a mortal body. The current you still can't withstand a single blow. With a sneer, Dustless turned into a storm and rushed towards Aizen Sosuke. You can't see it. Aizen was shocked. In his eyes, Dustless was teleporting. Aizen even thought that Dustless was using a demon technique to reduce his ability to think. After all, Dustless knows too many demon techniques. Bang bang bang. Without realizing it, a heavy kick landed on Aizen, causing him to spit out blood as he was sent flying by the force of the kick. Kaka kaka. The ground cracked, and a giant hole appeared. Aizen Sosuke was covered in blood, and his face was sunken in. He was powerless. In front of Dustless, Aizen Sosuke was like a child who couldn't even withstand a single blow. Their strengths were on completely different levels. Oh, something's wrong. Raising his eyebrows lightly, Dustless closed his eyes and his observation haki extended. He had seen Aizen Sosuke's Kyokusuka before. No wonder it felt so strange. It turned out to be a disguise. Under the detection of haki, Aizen's body on the ground turned into a Zanpakuto. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Behind him a sharp aura suddenly attacked. Dust turned his head and saw a black figure approaching. Aizen Sosuke's distorted face was clearly visible, and a black light was pulsing around him. Hado 90 Black Coffin. The floating black luster materialized, forming a dense mass of blades that pierced toward him. Puchi. 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 Aizen Sosuke suffered a fatal injury. His entire body was riddled with holes, hundreds of them, each as big as a thumb. He looked extremely gloomy. Kaka kaka in a trance, Dustless heard the sound of glass breaking. Looking closely, the Hogyoku inlaid on Aizen's chest turned into a pile of fragments. You shouldn't be able to be reborn. With a calm smile, Dustless was relieved. Looking at the dying Sosuke Aizen, Dustless's heart relaxed a lot. This smelly cockroach that couldn't be killed was finally going to fall. Aizen's power comes from the Hogyoku. Once the Hogyoku is destroyed, it means that he is about to completely fall. Let's die more thoroughly. The earth surged, and a giant sword handle faintly formed, exuding a blazing temperature and destructive power. Hado 96, One Sword Cremation. Under Dustless's command, fire broke out of the ground and formed a giant sword that covered the sky. Dustless shattered it, and Aizen Sosuke, whose consciousness was already blurred, was hit by the sword. Boom boom boom. After a violent explosion, the blue sky turned crimson, and Aizen's Ryatsu completely disappeared, along with the Hogyoku fragments. Slowly in the horizon, only Dustless was left standing alone in the sky. Chapter 1222. Spiritual pressure spread throughout Soul Society. When Dustless discovered that Sosuke Aizen had completely fallen, he breathed a sigh of relief and calmly looked for the way. You want to kill me? Dream on. A sneer came out of nowhere, and some minced meat appeared in the sky, then slowly expanded and extended out of Aizen Sonosuke's body. You're the shallow one. I've completely fused with the Hogyoku, and even you can't kill me. I'm immortal, and my super regeneration ability is beyond your knowledge. You're also the shallow one. Even if I'm destroyed to the point where not even the most basic cells are left, I can still reappear and form a new body. Aizen Sonosuke said proudly, and his expression was full of arrogance. At the same time, Aizen Sonosuke evolved again. Instead of one evolution, it was more accurate to say that he evolved 2 or 3 times, because his Ryatsu was 3 or 4 times stronger than before. There was a slit that looked like an eye on his forehead, and his face turned black. The skin on his face was torn from the middle, and was now on both sides of his black face. There were 3 holes in his upper body, and the Hogyoku was in the top hole. His Zanpakuto was fused with his right hand, and there were 6 huge butterfly wings. Each wing had a skeleton growing out of its spine, and it didn't look like a Shinigami at all. It actually recovered. Looking at the blue sphere, Hogyoku, Dustless was a little surprised. This state is not bad. Not only was the form different from before, but even the voice was similar to Daikoku's, and the hoarse voice was full of murderous intent. This seems to be the final form of the Hogyoku. This is the final form? It's not that strong. Hearing this, Dustless's calm eyes rippled. At first he was quite surprised. After all, Aizen Sanosuke and Shinozaki Ichigo fought several times to evolve to this state. But now Dustless was really surprised. Dustless shook his head in disappointment when he sensed Sosuke Aizen's spiritual pressure. It seems that I was right to give up on the Hogyoku. This kind of vulgar item is not suitable for me. He touched the black pearl on his chest. Compared to the power of the Spirit King, the Hogyoku was nothing. The Hogyoku was created from the souls of Shinigami and Hollow, so there was a limit to the number of souls it could absorb. Sosuke Aizen's evolution was also limited, while the power of the Spirit King contained the souls of the entire world. Dustless was intoxicated by the surging waves of spiritual pressure that made him unable to stop himself. Just so. Aizen, who had turned into a great void, curled his lips and said with disdain, "You are just jealous that I stole your Hogyoku. I have already evolved several times. Do you still think you can beat me?" "Really?" Seeing this, Dustless smirked and asked, "Then can you feel my spiritual pressure?" Aizen's face stiffened as he stared at Dustless. Indeed, he couldn't feel Dustless's Ryatsu. Dustless's Ryatsu didn't make any sense. Existences of different dimensions couldn't feel each other's spiritual pressure. That's just a coincidence. You are just using a demon technique. Sosuke Aizen retorted. Demon technique? You are. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Without giving Dustless a chance to speak, Aizen flapped his wings and instantly crossed 100 meters. His Zanpakuto slashed at Dustless's left side. Sure enough, it's just a temporary realm. You don't even have the most basic reaction. Seeing that Dustless didn't move, Sosuke Aizen increased the strength of his Zanpakuto. He wanted to kill this freak who was blocking the progress of the world. Clang clang clang. Intermittent echoes echoed throughout the world. Sosuke Aizen's arm was stinging. He couldn't even hold his Zanpakuto tightly and almost dropped it. What is this guy's head made of, iron? Or is it made of diamonds? No, at my current level, I can even easily shatter a diamond. Aizen's jaw almost dropped. Dustless's right ear was intact, it wasn't damaged at all. On the contrary, Sosuke Aizen's right arm was trembling. Are you tickling me? You're not a baby who sucks on milk. Have you not eaten yet? Use more strength. Wu Chen ordered with a stern face. You bastard, stop looking down on me. His mouth twitching fiercely, Aizen Sosuke's body twitched in anger at Dustless' words. His eyes filled with anger, and a sharp roar reverberated throughout Soul Society. Boom boom boom. Sosuke Aizen flapped his wings and rolled out a storm that swept across Soul Society. The earth was scorched, and the sky was like a whirlpool. A giant void flash appeared above Soul Society. The moment it appeared, the entire sky was torn apart, revealing the dark and cold universe. The dark purple light annihilated the sky. The expanding sphere seemed to be able to swallow the universe. The sky of Soul Society was destroyed, revealing the brilliant stars in the depths of the Milky Way. Chapter 1223. Aizen laughed wildly. At this point he didn't expect to kill Spirit King. His heart and mind were filled with an unwavering goal. He wanted to annihilate Dustless completely. He wanted to vaporize all of his cells. Boom boom boom. The aftermath of the void flash was still gradually expanding, and the tyrannical spiritual pressure spread throughout the entire Soul Society. The boundless sky was swallowed up, and in the vast starry sky, only the high-speed spinning void flash was left, as well as Wu Chen, who was standing in the sky. He seems very strong. After a long time, he sensed that the energy ball that swallowed the starry skies had thrown out a hurricane that was as cold as a knife. Dustless's unchanging face finally relaxed a little. Are you afraid? This is reasonable. After all, you are also a creature, a living body. It is normal for anyone who is alive to fear the current me. Aizen looked down at Dustless and said in a natural tone. Fear you? Just you? Who do you think you are? Pursing his lips, Wu Chen said disdainfully. Do you know the difference between us? My goal is the universe, while your goal is limited to this planet. You want to be a local god. Pedantic, vulgar, childish dream. You. Eisen rolled his eyes. His murderous intent soared. His great dream was mocked by Dustless as a child's dream. How could his arrogant heart bear it? Go to hell, you ant who blocks my path to godhood. Eisen let out an earth-shattering roar, and the high-density energy sphere in the void increased by dozens of times. The storm of spiritual pressure threatened to break through Soul Society's defenses, and the entire Soul Society howled in pain. Disappear immediately, you eyesore of a bug. With that, Eisen threw a giant energy ball at Dustless. Dustless's eyeballs were completely occupied by the energy ball, and a destructive storm swept across the world. It wasn't a void flash that hit Dustless. It was an entire world. Oh. My lovely Soul Society was destroyed by you. I'm a captain. No, I'm a Soul King now. How do you expect me to survive? How do you expect me to explain this to the millions of people? Wu Chen mumbled to himself with annoyance. He looked at the exaggerated giant void flash. His eyes were still full of ridicule. He didn't look serious at all. Even if the earth collapsed and the sky shook, even if the world was dark, and the mountains and rivers were destroyed, Dustless's heart remained calm. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, the cold and unwilling roar resounded through the earpiece. Dustless heard the sorrowful cries of the Soul Society, heard the pain of the flowers and trees, and heard the mournful cries of the entire world. The mournful cries made people shudder, and their hair stand on end. But when Dustless heard it, he was not moved at all. He did not even have any superfluous expression. His heart remained as calm as an ancient well. The moment I became a Soul King, I began to ignore life. This is perhaps the biggest difference between a god and other creatures. No matter how many ants die, I won't be moved or sad. Dustless muttered to himself. He looked up at the void flash. He only thought about Uno Hanaretsu and the others. He didn't care about the lives of others. It's time to end the fight between children. The Tensigen rippled, and the surface of his skin flashed with an emerald luster. It wrapped around Dustless's body, and in the blink of an eye, it swallowed him whole. It was the chakra mode of the Tensigen. Whoosh 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 behind him, 6 balls flew to the front, embellished with a mysterious luster. Dustless clenched his fists, and the balls instantly turned into liquid and condensed in his delicate arms. Then he stared straight ahead, and the golden light in his palms flickered. Let's put an end to all grievances, Eisen. Dustless whispered softly, and the powerful light beam in his hands extended to infinity. It wasn't an exaggeration to describe it as 1,000 miles. 1 meter, 10 meters, 1,000 meters, 10,000 meters, 100,000 meters. The light was boundless and had no end, just like Wu Chen's boundless ambition. However, no one dared to question his power, just like Wu Chen's original body, forever unfathomable. Golden Wheel Reincarnation Explosion. Gotcha. The giant energy ball was cut in half by the golden light. It was as simple as cutting tofu. It couldn't resist at all. Pucci. Eisen himself was the same. Even when he died, he still looked at the light beam that was about to sweep across the universe. Then he looked at Dustless's indifferent face and finally understood. There was a world of difference between a man who only wanted to be a god of a planet, and a man who wanted to step on the universe. The two didn't have the slightest similarity. It was as far apart as the difference between the 2 dimensions and the 3 dimensions. In Eisen's world, he wanted to step on all living things and become the only god, while Dustless wanted to step on the universe and become the god of gods. The difference between their realms was too great. They weren't from the same world. That old bastard Yawatch still hasn't come out. I've been waiting for him for a long time for this beautiful script. If he doesn't show up, how can I, the director, endure it? Damn bastard, at least have some influence. He scanned the void and his irritated gaze passed through Soul Society, extending to Hueco Mundo and the modern world, but he did not find any trace of Yawatch, not even his little brother Mickey. He could not help but curse Yawatch. Yawatch, who was hiding in the dark, was also stunned. The clash between Dustless and Aizen was more intense than any of his previous battles. Even the battle with Yamamoto and Ryu Shigeki wasn't as intense as this. Aizen's ability to destroy the world with a snap of his fingers was enough to make all living beings tremble in fear. However, in front of Dustless, he was nothing more than a clown. Chapter 1224. Yawatch had no other choice. He didn't expect Dustless to be so terrifying. His strength was far beyond any of his past enemies. What Yawatch couldn't accept the most was that this guy had obtained Yamamoto Ryusai Shigekuni's Zanpakuto. That was something that Yawatch himself coveted, and the way he got it made him want to cry. This new head captain. How did he get Yamamoto's Zanpakuto Tachi? Yawatch was deeply confused. He was curious and perplexed about how Wuchin had acquired Zanka Hotachi. Jugram, how did that guy get Zanpakuto Tachi? Hearing this, Jugram felt awkward and ashamed. He said apologetically, "Your Majesty, I fought with him before and was unfortunately killed by him. Because of that, he took my star badge so..." At this point, Jugram lowered his head and looked at Yawatch. I'll let it go this time. Don't disappoint me in the future. There will be no next time, Jugram." Yawatch snorted. Perhaps if it was someone else, Yawatch would have already killed him. However, Jugram's identity was special. He was the next king of the Wandenrake. At the same time, he was also Yawatch's other half. Yawatch couldn't afford to kill him. "Your Majesty, then we..." Jugram stopped talking and looked at Yerbak, who was resting with his eyes closed. He also fell silent. All the energy in his body had been drained, and he was extremely tired. "Continue hiding. We don't have the right time now." Yawatch waved his hand and said resolutely. When he said that, even he himself felt a little incredulous. It was clearly a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, but due to the opponent's strength, he had to find such a tongue-twisting excuse. Yawatch himself felt aggrieved and unhappy. He had never felt so vexed before. "I thought that Yamamoto Ryusai Shigekuni's death was a good thing. Who would have thought that an even more perverted bastard would appear? He even got the thing I wanted, Zanpakuto Tachi." Some Harbok cursed in their hearts, their resentment rising to the heavens. "Your Majesty." Jugram had naturally noticed Habaku's strange behavior, and could only smile bitterly. He felt powerless towards Dustless's sudden rise to power, and felt that it was inconceivable. A mere person was able to stop the entire Wanless Empire in their tracks. No one else in the world could achieve such a feat. The only person who could do so was Dustless. That heaven-defying absolute strength had suppressed them to the point where they couldn't breathe. They could only hide and hide like they were now. They were no different from street rats that everyone wanted to kill. "Allah Allah, you are not dead yet. Your strength, oh no, I should say that the power of the Hogyoku is not bad." Dustless had a smile on his face. His praise was harsh, making Aizen feel uncomfortable. Aizen stared at him ferociously. His piercing eyes made people shrink back in fear. Looking closely, Sosuke Aizen was still in a dismembered state. "Don't be complacent. No one in this world can end me, not even you." Aizen Sokiai retorted in a sharp voice. A carefree smile appeared on his face, and his twisted old face was full of pride. He looked at Dustless. His face was clean and emotionless, only a hint of pity. "You are just a dog that I used to attract Habak. Since he hasn't come out yet, do you think you have any value in being used?" "I'm sorry I don't," Dustless said coldly, sending Sosuke Aizen to hell. At the same time, his chakra began to surge, like an ancient dragon that was about to wake up. His aura raged, and the ancient barbaric aura descended. "What's going on?" Sosuke Aizen's face darkened. His unique aura made him feel like he was in the same situation. Especially when Aizen felt an extremely dangerous power coming out of Dustless's body. If he wasn't careful, Aizen would be in trouble. Aizen's body that was torn apart by the Golden Wheel reincarnation explosion healed again. "Ah, I have an immortal body. Even if you destroy my body you can't. I'll end you now." The black sphere floated into the sky, its boundless gravitational force sweeping across Soul Society. There was no limit to it, and even the fluctuations of power passed through Soul Society, strongly affecting the real world and Hueco Mundo. Chibaku Tensei. The gravitational force that destroyed the world showed its ferocity. The earth that hadn't moved for tens of thousands of years cracked, and the bright sky was covered by the black light. It was just a tiny bead, but it had destroyed the entire world. An unusual vibration spread throughout the entire world. Kakaka. A large mountain rose from the ground and floated in the sky, approaching the bead. Even Sosuke Aizen was unable to control himself. What the hell is this? How is this possible? Aizen's confident eyes were shaken, and his tone was full of shock. This was the first time he encountered such a strange situation. You want me to wait for death? Wishful thinking. With a groan, Sosuke Aizen's Ryatsu began to surge. The Ryatsu melted the floating mountain fragments around him, and he was lucky enough to escape from the gravitational force. Heido 96 Cremation. The ground began to shake, and a giant flame sword could be seen clearly. After fusing with Hogyoku, Sosuke Aizen became immortal, and it didn't matter if a part of his body was damaged. Seeing the flame of the broadsword, Wuchen smiled contemptuously and was extremely calm. Will Grave, Border Prison. In the invisible world, several shadows flew out one after another, blocking Sosuke Aizen's attack like an iron wall. Boom boom boom. Cremation's giant blade only extended half of its body before it inexplicably exploded, and molten lava swept out. You mentioned an explosion? What's going on? Sosuke Aizen was stunned, and his eyes widened in shock. Cremation didn't even hit Chibaku Tensei, and it inexplicably exploded. How could he not be surprised? It's time to call it a day. You can get up there too. Glancing at Sosuke Aizen, Dustless said indifferently, as if he was talking to an insect. Sosuke Aizen's old face was so depressed that he almost vomited blood. Ha! Dustless shouted, and the chakra in his body erupted even more vigorously. Kakaka, the void was torn apart by the strong gravitational force, and the whole world seemed to have reached its end. Pucci. Sosuke Aizen tried his best to resist the gravitational force around him, and even if his body was torn apart, he gritted his teeth and held on. He knew that he would be finished if he was sucked in. You want to catch me? What a joke. After a moment of stalemate, Aizen adapted to the harsh environment and resisted the attack of Chibaku Tensei for the time being. He shouted, I'm not the same as I used to be. Put away your contemptuous eyes and get lost. Dustless snorted disdainfully, and the chakra in his body erupted to the limit. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The floating mountain fragments all accelerated in an instant. The slow momentum was gone, and all of them flew toward the expanding Chibaku Tensei at the speed of sound. In the blink of an eye, the palm-sized sphere turned into a meteorite that covered the sky. This time, you annoying bug should be finished. Dustless muttered to himself, and at the same time his eyes expanded. The meteorite grew bigger and bigger, until it almost covered the entire sky. This way, you annoying cockroach won't be able to jump anymore. Wuchen smiled faintly. Then under everyone's shocked gazes he shouted softly, Kamui. A black hole appeared in the void, and Dustless threw the meteorite into it. It ends here. Chapter 1225. Dustless didn't know what the others were thinking. Anyway, he had already said what he wanted to say. After arriving at their destination, the other party still couldn't find the other one, and wanted to kill him. At that time, Dustless wouldn't give the other party a chance. He would leave all kinds of information along the way. In such a situation, he would directly reveal the coordinates of the two to the other gods, and let them bring reinforcements to besiege them. On the other hand, he might be able to fight the other party quickly. Although he didn't need to directly distinguish the winner, he could carefully fight a battle of attrition with the other party, and wait for reinforcements to arrive. In this case, it would be a better and more reliable plan. Dustless's plan was as stable as that, but after coming up with it, it still depended on the black-robed man's decision. The black-robed man carefully observed Dustless in front of him. After careful observation, he felt that Dustless didn't seem to be lying. However, he also knew that these words couldn't be taken lightly. It was very likely that there would be a problem. But now he had no other choice. He could only try his best to treat a dead horse as a living horse. Therefore, in the face of such a situation, the black-robed man nodded directly to Dustless. "All right, since you've already said so, then I'll fulfill your wish. You'll go with me. The rest of you will stay here and watch over Yi-Do. If Yi-Do shows any abnormal behavior, then you can blame yourself. As long as you're still alive, then it's fine. If I send out a signal, then you can just kill Yi-Do." This time, the black-robed man could be said to have arranged the action clearly. He didn't give the others any chance to survive. In the face of such a situation, Dustless was obviously gnashing his teeth. The black-robed man in front of him said that he believed in him, but secretly he still didn't trust him. He still left Yi-Do on his side. He probably planned to kill Yi-Do immediately if he found out that Yi-Do had deceived him. Then the black-robed man would personally kill Yi-Do. In the face of such a situation, Yi-Do directly closed his eyes and didn't say anything. He was always thinking about Dustless in his heart, hoping that Dustless would be safe. After all, no one could change Dustless's decision. Moreover, Dustless was determined to do it. It could be said that he was very strong. Dustless also made up his mind at this moment. He absolutely couldn't die in this journey. The black-robed man saw that Dustless didn't have any objections. This time he believed in Dustless even more. Especially in the face of such a situation, he directly narrowed his eyes and nodded slightly. Then he said to Dustless, "In order to prevent you from having the strength to escape midway, I won't release the chains on your body. In such a situation, you can continue to bind her. However, I will reduce my strength so that you can do it better. You won't be in so much pain while being chained by him." In such a situation, although Dustless was a little dissatisfied sometimes, he didn't say anything in the end. After all, at this point, it could be said that he had already reached one of his expectations. After that, Dustless planned to set off quickly. After all, if he set off now, he didn't know if he could reach that place. Dustless specifically told the black-robed man that this place was the place where he first appeared. Did Dustless really have some kind of mystery? Could he once again return to the place where the other big tree was located? But no matter what, he could only report this location now. In such a situation, there was no need to say anything more. He hurried along with the black-robed man. There was still a little distance between this place and that place, but for a god, the distance wasn't particularly long. Facing such a situation, Dustless completely remembered what kind of place this was and whose temple this place was. In such a situation, it was possible to know who was cooperating with the black-robed man, and who was protecting and indulging the black-robed man in such a situation. Dustless suspected that there was another possibility. The black-robed man was the god in charge of this area. After all, the black-robed man shouldn't have betrayed so blatantly without being discovered. Dustless was more inclined to think that the black-robed man and the god in charge of this place had reached some kind of deal that allowed the black-robed man to exist here safely and not be found by others. Wu Qin maintained a certain degree of silence along the way. Even the black-robed man didn't say much. It seemed that he had a close yearning for the destination. He wanted to know what kind of place it was in the middle. Dustless secretly did something along the way. He did it very secretly. Dustless guaranteed that the black-robed man didn't know about it. Otherwise, if the black-robed man knew about it, he would have already found Dustless. Therefore, the black-robed man shouldn't know what kind of signal Dustless left behind to guide others to this place. In such a situation, they soon arrived at this place. Dustless felt the familiar environment and breathed a sigh of relief. He really felt that he hadn't seen these things for a long time. He had been killing enemies on the battlefield for a whole day. In the enemy's base, he hadn't seen these familiar environments for a long time. Now these familiar environments had changed a little. He estimated that they had already experienced several cycles of reincarnation. After Wu Qin arrived at this place, he let out a sigh, showing a little emotion. Then he continued to walk. Chapter 12:26. Finally, Dustless said to the black-robed man next to him, "To be honest, I was just an ordinary person at that time. Here, I sensed a dark shadow directly attacking a person. Under such circumstances, I acted bravely, but I fell into a dangerous situation. At the critical moment, I entered a mysterious state, a mysterious environment. Therefore, I gained a power. The black-robed man walked while listening to Dustless's narration. At the same time, he carefully observed the surrounding environment to see if there was anything special. In such a situation, he wanted to find the most important thing. Maybe those key things can be confirmed after finding the location of the thing that Dustless mentioned. In that case, he didn't have to look for it anymore. After all, he was now wandering aimlessly in this place. In such a situation, Dustless also sighed, then directly said to the black-robed man next to him, "Can I ask you what exactly happened to you? I can feel that there is a feeling in your body. This feeling is very urgent, urging you to find and do these things. What kind of situation and things have happened to you? What kind of accident has happened to you? What will happen? Is it convenient for you to tell me about it?" Dustless can only try his best to stall for time at this moment, and see if he can continue to hear more information from this person. This way, it will be convenient for him to speak. If the black-robed man escapes, he can go and check his identity. After all, if some reinforcements arrive at that time, it is very likely that there is no way to do anything to this person. In such a situation, he can only compromise as much as possible and let the black-robed man's identity be exposed. This way, he can be caught sooner or later. Dustless felt that the black-robed man in front of him knew the culprit of those monsters. It was because of those monsters that a series of tragic events happened. Therefore, the black-robed man in front of him must not be able to clear his name. The black-robed man glanced at Dustless. After Dustless came here, he seemed to feel that his heart had calmed down a little. Facing such a question, he finally thought about it and slowly opened his mouth. "I know you're inquiring about me, but at this moment, I'm actually in the mood to talk about it. Naturally, I'm willing to tell you about it. However, I'm not afraid of what kind of tricks you might play. After all, these aren't particularly big problems for me. Even if I reveal it to you, you can't do anything to me." The black-robed man's arrogance reflected his confidence in his own strength. In the face of such a situation, Dustless couldn't wait. After all, it would be the best situation for him if the black-robed man underestimated him more and more. Therefore, Dustless heard from the black-robed man some things about the examination. Other people were indeed possessed by the devil during cultivation. Then, under such a situation, he began to think of ways to return to his original appearance because he really didn't want to become a monster that was neither human nor ghost. However, such a situation didn't improve at all. The black-robed man tried many methods, but in the end, he didn't see any effect. At most, this sentence was effective, but it couldn't cure the root cause at all. In such a situation, it triumphed over other thoughts. He thought of his own people. Now that he had become like this, all he needed to do was to capture more people and conduct more research. Perhaps he would be able to get the final answer. In that case, he might be able to save himself. But he didn't want to waste any more time. Instead, he thought about his own people. He thought about his own people. When Dustless heard this, he felt that everything was as he expected. But in such a situation, he seemed to have some doubts. According to the other party's description, although his strength was strong, he couldn't build such a large base by himself. He couldn't do such a big thing. After all, there were still his accomplices. In such a situation, Wu Chen listened carefully. This was what happened later, and what kind of unforeseen event happened in the following situations. Then Dustless knew that under such circumstances, the black-robed man suddenly met other people. These people were also very crazy. They also wanted to create something. Although they didn't know what the purpose of creating these things was, the black-robed man felt that since everyone had the same purpose, they should cooperate together. Dustless didn't know what the black-robed man was talking about. Dustless didn't know what the black-robed man was talking about. After hearing this, Dustless was a little surprised. He really didn't know what was going on. Under such a situation, many things became more confusing. It turned out that there were two groups of people. The first group was led by the black-robed man who wanted to do experiments. The other group was more crazy. They seemed to want to create chaos and death. Under such circumstances, They created so many monsters and made more yarn. Nobody knew what they wanted to do. Under such a situation, Dustless thought about all this in his heart. He wondered who the other group of people were. Were they traitors? Or were they people who had never appeared in front of others? If they weren't traitors, then everyone should have more or less known about some special situations and information. They should have already exposed some things that should be exposed. Therefore, it should be those hidden people who didn't often appear in front of others. These hidden people had crazy ideas, and then crazily did experiments for their own purposes. Under such circumstances, they hit it off with the black-robed man. In the process, these people also instigated some gods to join their camp. Chapter 12:27. Dustless felt that all of this seemed a little fake, but his rationality told him that all of this was true. Dustless wasn't lying, and what he said was all true. In the face of such a situation, Dustless only felt more and more confused and complicated. Even if he could capture this black-robed man, he wouldn't be able to find out who the other group of people were. Dustless reckoned that this black-robed man wouldn't sell out the information of those people. If this was really the case, then it would be a little troublesome. After all, if he couldn't completely eliminate those dangers, then the following situation would be very bad. In the face of such a situation, if those people didn't give up, they would have to find a suitable time to continue to create those monsters. At that time, they might become more hidden. They might accumulate a certain number of monsters before revealing them to attack others. When Dustless thought of this possibility, he felt a little scared. Therefore, Dustless knew that if he captured this person in front of him, the final battle might not stop. Facing such a situation, Dustless's heart occasionally had a trace of hesitation and confusion. He was thinking about what to do at this time. He felt a little helpless now. Originally, he thought that he had seen everything, but he didn't expect that what he saw was only a part of it. He hadn't seen the more comprehensive part yet. In such a situation, Dustless also felt a little helpless, but Dustless would never give up because of these things. Even if there was still a hidden group of people, Dustless wouldn't give up so easily. He was determined to find those people and eliminate them. Under such circumstances, Wu Chen said to the person in front of him, "I want to know if you are a god or not. Do you have a temple of your own or not? If you do, then how did you hide it from everyone? Could it be that in such a situation, you will continue to divide yourself into two?" Facing such a situation and such a question, the black-robed man was contemplating whether he should continue to hide the truth instead of telling everything to the person in front of him. After all, he wasn't sure if it was a good thing for him to reveal everything under such circumstances. Dustless knew that the black-robed man had fallen into hesitation under such a situation. But now that it was a critical moment, if he could find out more information, then he might be able to solve the mystery. If that was the case, he might be able to unravel more of the mystery. Originally, these things would have been presented to him very well. In such a situation, Dustless said to the black-robed man in front of him, "What are you still hesitating about? After all, I am now firmly in your hands, right? If you don't find anything in this place, you'll kill me, won't you? In such a situation, what is there to be afraid of? I'm on your side now." Dustless's persuasion directly touched the black-robed man's heart. Facing such a situation, the black-robed man finally said to Dustless after hesitating for a moment, "It seems that you do seem to be very interested in my affairs. Then I'll tell you directly. Under such circumstances, I am indeed a god. It's true that I made some mistakes in my own strength and strayed down the wrong path. That's why I covered myself so tightly and found other ways to save myself." After hearing such an answer, Dustless finally sighed. It seemed that he really didn't understand why such a problem would appear. Originally, a god was high above, solving the problems here every day, dealing with demons and ghosts, and then harvesting the power of faith to obtain immortality. In this case, it was really a good thing. But in such a situation, why would there be a problem directly? Previously, he met a god. Because there was a problem with his artifact, it caused him to suffer a backlash. Then in such a situation, what kind of problem did this person have? Was it because his artifact was contaminated with demonic energy? Or was it because he was sick? Or was it because he accidentally went astray? Then he directly infected his artifact. That was why something happened to him in such a situation. In fact, as a powerful god, under certain circumstances, if he wanted to decisively make these steps, he should be able to do it. But why didn't he do it? Facing these questions, Dustless hesitated for a while. He didn't know whether to ask this question or not. After all, this matter felt like a private matter in the heart of the person. If he asked this question, then he didn't know if he could get an answer. Anyway, he already knew the identity of the black-robed man. He was now sure that the black-robed man was a powerful god. If he could escape from this place and be rescued, then the black-robed man in front of him would run away. Then after some investigation, he would be able to find out the true identity of the black-robed man. At that time, this black-robed person would really not be able to escape. His purpose would have been achieved. Then, was there a need for him to explore the scars in the depths of his heart? After all, the reason why he became like this came from those things. If he directly asked him in such a situation, it would be equivalent to sprinkling salt on his wound. Although the black-robed person did a lot of wrong things, he still had his own rights. He was also a god who had done a lot of good things. Chapter 12:28. Therefore, in such a situation, Wu Chen finally gave an answer. It was better for him to stop asking and not ask any more questions. After the rescue team came and captured the identity of this god, he would ask other people about other things. It was better not to ask now. After all, it wasn't necessary. When the black-robed man saw that Dustless didn't continue asking, he became a little curious and asked directly, "You don't want to continue asking in such a situation? I thought you would continue to ask. After all, you're really curious about me, so I'm willing to tell you about it. Besides, I know that if I can't find a way to survive here, we will be buried here together. I'm also willing to tell you a lot of things." Dustless felt that the most important thing in such a situation was that if he couldn't find a way to survive, then he would die together with the black-robed man. Therefore, at this time, the black-robed man's trust in him increased a lot, but even so, it was still the same. The black-robed man didn't care much about this matter. Instead, he continued to talk on his own initiative. He didn't care whether the black-robed man was willing to listen or not. Dustless continued to learn about such a person. In such a situation, the black-robed man obtained a very good Yiliang, that is, a divine artifact that didn't have a loyal owner, and was engraved with the name of many people. Although such a divine artifact was quite good in terms of power, in the end it was still in a mediocre state. Generally speaking, no one liked it. Dustless didn't expect that a great god like him would try to subdue this Yiliang under such circumstances. After all, there was really no need for this matter. A person like him could directly obtain a lot of good, unique, and clean divine artifacts. At that time, when the black-robed man met the Yiliang, he liked this divine artifact very much and invested a lot of effort into it. Then Dustless knew that there was a problem with Yiliang. But in such a situation, the black-robed man was still thinking of other ways to get the divine artifact. Yiliang's divine artifact was a problem. Yiliang's divine artifact was a problem. But under such circumstances, the black-robed man was still thinking of other ways to get the divine artifact. Because he really loved and cared for this divine artifact very much, he found that no matter what kind of person he was, he had no other way. Under such circumstances, he directly went astray and accidentally did the wrong thing. Then, under such circumstances, he directly carried out a symbiotic relationship with this Yiliang. Both of them were directly tied together. But under such circumstances, the final result was very bad. In the end, he couldn't find a solution. On the contrary, Yiliang directly wanted to commit suicide out of guilt to solve all the problems. However, suicide couldn't solve the problem. Instead, it made the problem of the black-robed man in front of him more serious. When Dustless heard this, he felt that this was a tragedy, a tragic one. Dustless didn't know what to say for a while. In fact, Dustless knew that the person in front of him had finally embarked on a path of no return. It was very miserable. Dustless felt that he was a little cruel at this moment, because most of what he said was a lie. The Yiliang didn't have a correct way to survive long ago. Therefore, in the face of such a situation, the Yiliang was already doomed. But Dustless knew that he had to do so. If he didn't do so, he would be in danger. It could only be said that one wrong step led to many wrong steps. Now there was no turning back. After Dustless heard the whole story, the person in front of him asked him, "What's wrong?" In such a situation, after telling the story, "You still haven't found a clue of the original place? My patience is limited. Your life and death are in my hands, but I can't find it for a long time. I'm getting impatient." Dustless also knew that this was where his danger lay. Facing such a situation, he was thinking about what he should do next. He could only stall for time as much as possible because there was no other choice. In such a situation, Wu Chen could only patronize the other party for the time being. "I said that I might not be able to find this place. In such a situation, I can only try my best to wait patiently. Perhaps if we continue walking, we might be able to find this crucial place. After all, the things that happened before, and the memories are also a very mysterious moment and state for me." After Dustless said these words, he stared straight at the black-robed man, waiting for his reaction. At this moment, the black-robed man stopped. Obviously, he didn't want to continue the search in such a situation. The black-robed man's eyes flashed with a dangerous light at this moment. He stared at Dustless and said, "Do you remember last time that you entered such a state because you were on the verge of death? How about this time? I'll put you in such a state and see if you can still enter such a state. What do you think?" "I think it's still possible." Wu Chen could see that there was some light in the other party's eyes. He knew that he was in danger at this moment. The other party was not negotiating with him at all. Instead, under such circumstances, the other party directly made this decision for him. He was simply making a decision for him. Dustless was thinking at this moment whether he should directly fall out with the black-robed man, or continue to pretend in such a situation. Chapter 1229. In such a situation, Wu Chen didn't intend to continue feigning civility with the other party. After all, there was no need to exist in such a situation. If he really continued to act with the other party, if the act became real and hurt himself, wouldn't the loss outweigh the gain? Furthermore, Dustless wasn't willing to entrust his life to someone else. That was the most insecure thing he could do. Therefore, in the face of such a situation, Dustless directly spoke to the black-robed man. "I don't think it's necessary at all. Besides, although you don't have much time left, we're already here. Why can't we continue to be patient? Besides, the story you're going to tell is quite short. Do you think it's realistic to want to find that thing in such a short time? I don't think it's realistic." At this moment, the black-robed man was already brandishing the weapon in his hand. Under such circumstances, the chain on his hand fluttered, and his body began to emit some aura. Under such circumstances, it seemed like the black-robed man was about to attack the person in front of him. Dustless also quickly prepared for battle. After all, no matter what, all the tricks he had done along the way should have been sent out. In the face of such a situation, the other party should be able to save him in time. There was no need for him to panic. What Dustless needed to do now was to stall for time as much as possible until the reinforcements arrived. As long as the reinforcements arrived, the black-robed man in front of him wouldn't be able to do anything to him. Therefore, in the face of such a situation, Dustless directly spoke to the black-robed man in front of him. "It seems that you are determined to use your method. Then I have nothing else to say. I can't put my life in your hands like this. After all, this is not a guarantee for me. If you really want to kill me, and I don't have any ability to resist, I will definitely be unwilling to be killed by you. So, I am willing to fight with you." After saying these words, Dustless directly pulled out his Tang saber and pulled away from the black-robed man in time. During the journey, Dustless had already recovered from the previous battles. Under such circumstances, Dustless already knew how to fight this battle. This battle was a battle of life and death. There wouldn't be a battle of attrition. This time, the black-robed man would definitely be serious. Therefore, in the face of such a situation, what he had to do now was to fight with all his might. Then he had to probe the black-robed man's strength. In such a situation, he had to rely on what kind of ability the black-robed man had to reach this stage. After all, Dustless was able to deduce the black-robed man's identity. Even the black-robed man himself admitted that he was once a god. In such a situation, Dustless couldn't let his guard down. He had to be cautious. The moment Dustless pulled away from the black-robed man, he saw a hook with demonic chi. It directly attacked Dustless in front of him. Facing such a situation, Dustless didn't panic. He calmly dealt with the situation, and directly used his Tang saber to block the black-robed man's attack. In such a situation, Dustless felt that the black-robed man took out a dagger. This dagger made Dustless feel a little dangerous. Dustless knew that this dagger was the one the black-robed man made when he first met him. Moreover, this dagger seemed to have a great attacking power against him. It could be said to be a very powerful and unpredictable weapon. Dustless didn't know what this thing was, but he could instinctively feel the threat it posed to him. The black-robed man directly said to Dustless, "Because I don't know about the little tricks you have done along the way? Don't forget that I was once a god. In such a situation, there are some messages that I naturally know. In the face of such a situation, guess what I did?" After Dustless heard such news, he was slightly surprised because he really didn't expect such a situation. He thought that the black-robed man didn't know about the little tricks he had done along the way. And if the black-robed man knew, why didn't he stop him earlier? In such a situation, the black-robed man only said it now. It felt like the black-robed man was testing him. Moreover, according to the black-robed man's temper, if the black-robed man knew about the tricks he had done along the way, then the black-robed man would naturally know that he was lying to him. There was no need for the black-robed man to follow him all the way to this place. It would be better for the black-robed man to attack him directly. Therefore, Dustless continued to pretend that he didn't understand anything, and said to the black-robed man with some doubts, "What tricks? I don't know. In such a situation, I clearly didn't do anything, but you said so. I really don't understand." After hearing these words, the black-robed man smiled and said directly to Dustless in front of him, "There's no need for you to put on a show with me because there's really no need for it. I've been indulging you all this time, because I want to know if what you said is true or not. After all, it could be half true and half false." After hearing the black-robed man's words, Dustless knew that the black-robed man had seen through him a long time ago. The black-robed man just didn't say anything because of the black-robed man's last wish. But because of his current actions, the black-robed man had already determined that the black-robed man's wish was completely destroyed. There was no way to save the black-robed man. Therefore, the black-robed man wanted to kill him and bury him with the black-robed man. Dustless was naturally unwilling to agree to such a situation. Fortunately, he wanted to know if all his plans had been seen through. Chapter 1230. If all the things he left behind were already in trouble, then it was really a very bad thing. It was simply a nightmare for him. But now, Dustless could only look forward to it a little. It was not completely destroyed yet. After all, there were several kinds of hands and feet he left behind, and they were all hidden. Even if she could distinguish one or two of them, she would not be able to distinguish them completely in such a situation. Otherwise, his message would not be able to be sent out, and his signal for help would be intercepted halfway. Then he could only fight against the person in front of him. He could no longer wait for reinforcements to arrive. If this was really the case, then the situation would be very bad. Facing such a situation, Dustless frowned. Then he looked at the person in front of him with a serious expression. His mind was quickly thinking about what to do next. But the other party had no other patience. He wanted to take Dustless's life. This time, the other party's chain was very sharp, and there were some sharp weapons on it. It seemed like the other party really wanted to save him. At this moment, Dustless was also a little embarrassed to deal with it. Tang Dao and Dustless were telepathically connected. When facing the other party's attack, they could always react emotionally and resist the other party's fierce attacks. But even so, the situation was still not that optimistic. At this moment, the other party did not hold back at all. It seemed like the other party wanted to kill him wholeheartedly. Dustless had been thinking about the other party's weakness. If his staff in close combat were not good enough, then he would eventually be defeated by the other party. What was the other party's weakness? Dustless planned to attack the other party's heart last time, but the other party's weakness did not seem to be the heart. If the weakness was not the heart, then where would it be? His chain? His neck? Or his head? In hindsight, I felt that it was very likely that the final weakness would be one of his weapons. Through the previous stories, I knew that he and his weapon were almost on the same page. They would live and die together. In such a situation, the weapon would be closely related to him and would be implicated in some way. Let's talk about the first chain that was related to the other party. That Yi Liang was still there. But Dustless always felt that it was not that simple. After all, the chain in his hand had a very special relationship with the person in front of him. When he first saw this chain, it was because he came to a temple. Then there was a kind deity in the temple. Because of improper management, the deity had too many divine weapons under her hands, which caused the divine weapons to fall ill. She also suffered a backlash. Among them, this chain could be said to be one of the most powerful weapons. Unfortunately, it had been neglected. That was why this chain had a problem. But the key point, how is this matter related to the black-cloaked person? Could it be that the chain and the black-cloaked person made a deal? So the two of them colluded with each other. Dustless suddenly felt that he seemed to have grasped an important clue in his mind. But such a clue was not completely displayed in this place. It was as if there was a cloud of fog that covered all these things, allowing him and the man to analyze them. However, Wu Chen knew that this chain must be unusual for the black-robed man. Although he didn't know what the relationship between the two was like, Dustless always felt that it was not simple. Therefore, in the face of such a situation, Wu Chen intended to make a guess and see if this chain would be the black-robed man's weakness. If it wasn't the black-cloaked person's weakness, then the black-cloaked person's weakness must be somewhere else. It was more likely that one of the divine weapons on the black-cloaked person's body was the black-cloaked person's weakness, which was closely related to the black-cloaked person's life. But this was just a guess. But now, if he guessed wrongly, then it was very likely that something bad would happen. So he had to be careful and not make a guess casually. So in the face of such a situation, Dustless was also thinking about how to tactfully test the black-cloaked person's weakness. If he attacked the black-cloaked person's weakness with all his strength, then he would certainly bear the pressure of the black-cloaked person's all-out attack. Dodging the black-cloaked person's attack and attacking the black-cloaked person at the same time was a difficult thing to do. So he only had one chance to guess wrongly. If he wanted to determine the black-cloaked person's weakness, then he could test it first. After confirming it, he could directly attack the black-cloaked person without any scruples or reservations. In the face of such a situation, Dustless was already prepared at this moment. In this process, he directly pretended to attack the black-cloaked person, but in fact, he was going all out to damage the chain to see if his guess had any effect. Under such circumstances, the chain was retracted. The Tang saber fiercely chased and chopped at the chain, causing some small flaws to appear at the mouth of the chain. In such a situation, he carefully stared at the black-cloaked person, trying to see if he could find any information from the black-cloaked person's eyes. But in the end, he still failed and didn't find any useful information. Because the black-cloaked person was wrapped tightly from head to toe, he couldn't speculate what the black-cloaked person was thinking from these things. If Dustless was still willing to believe in his intuition, and was willing to believe that he was not wrong, then the black-cloaked person's weakness should be this chain. Although he didn't know why it was this chain, as long as he could confirm it, then he didn't have anything to worry about. Therefore, Dustless directly changed his way of attack and slashed at the chain madly. He didn't care about the black-robed man in front of him. After all, Dustless had no other way at this moment. Chapter 1231. The only thing Dustless could do now was to attack the chain madly, and open up a way for himself to survive. As for other situations, Dustless didn't want to think about it anymore. He was now focused on entering the battle state. The black-robed man was a little surprised that Dustless would suddenly attack the chain. In such a situation, he directly began to attack in close combat. On the other hand, the chain was attacking from afar. After Dustless saw the black-robed man's action, he felt that his speculation was more reliable. If his guess was wrong, then the black-robed man didn't need to be so agitated. As long as the black-robed man attacked the other chain, it would be more advantageous for the black-robed man. However, the black-robed man didn't do that. In such a situation, it meant one thing. That was, the black-robed man must care about this chain. Although he didn't know what this chain meant to the black-robed man, but he could definitely see the importance of this chain to the black-robed man. He didn't know what was so important about the Dustless line, but in such a situation, it didn't stop him from launching this crazy attack. Even if the other party attacked him in close combat, he would still have the time to attack the chain as hard as he could as long as he was prepared to respond. The gaps on the chain became more and more under Dustless's crazy attacks. It looked a little scary, but Dustless also didn't feel good because he had consumed too much of his energy because of these attacks. In the process of the battle, the black-robed man didn't show any strange situation. It was good that he suddenly felt a little uncertain. However, he knew that he couldn't panic now. There was no turning back for him now. After all, now that he had reached this point, even if the path he took was wrong, he could only brace himself and go on. It was just that he knew that there was no other way. In such a situation, Dustless planned to attack the black-robed man directly with the chain. He wanted to see if the black-robed man was affected by his attack power. If the black-robed man was really affected by his attack on the chain, it meant that the black-robed man's situation was his weakness. Then he would have to attack the chain crazily, and the black-robed man would have nowhere to hide. So after he thought about these things, he quickly began to act. In the face of such a situation, he pretended to attack the chain, but in fact he was attacking the black-robed man in front of him. The black-robed man didn't expect that Wu Qin would directly attack him. Then he attacked himself. His abdomen was directly cut, and his black robe was torn apart. When the black robe was completely exposed in front of Dustless, Dustless also narrowed his eyes and thoroughly saw the black-robed man's situation. There was not a single piece of undamaged flesh on the black-robed man's abdomen. The condition of the black-robed man's body looked very bad, as if he had suffered a serious backlash. The skin on the black-robed man's body was not only in the state of green spots, but also in the state of black spots. It looked very scary. Dustless knew that the black-robed man's condition might be a little serious, but he never thought that the black-robed man's condition would be so serious. It could be seen that the black-robed man's condition had been going on for a long time, and the black-robed man seemed to be speculating that the black-robed man was in pain. These black-robed men should be tormenting him all the time, without a moment of rest. In such a situation, even some people sympathized with the black-robed man. After showing his abdomen, the black-robed man smiled and said while touching the black-robed man's abdomen, "Do you see it? This is the current me God. I have completely turned into a monster that is neither human nor ghost. Can you believe it? I was once a high and mighty God, a God that was admired by thousands of people. Now I have completely turned into a monster surrounded by black spots. How can I accept this?" After hearing the other party's words, Wu Chun sighed. It was really a mistake. But to be honest, at that time after he made a mistake, he directly took control of his problem in front of others. Maybe they could help him find a way to solve this problem. Wu Chun sighed after hearing the other party's words. It was true that he had made a mistake at that time. But he didn't. Instead, he went over there to do research. He tried all kinds of methods to make his injury more serious, but it didn't get better at all. He had already embarked on a path of no return. The most important problem was that he directly accepted the cooperation of others and conducted a series of human experiments. This was completely a heartless thing. After doing it, he definitely couldn't make his body get better. Otherwise, it would be against the harmony of the heavens. Dustless estimated that the black-robed man's body was originally covered in green spots. Later, they slowly turned black and white. This series of process must be due to the black-robed man's experiments. In the face of such a situation, Dustless didn't know how to comment on him. Anyway, he was wrong. Dustless didn't want to comment on him. After all, no matter what, the black-robed man always had his own thoughts. It was quite uncomfortable in his heart, so there was no need for him to ridicule the black-robed man. Under such a situation, the black-robed man sighed and said to Dustless, "Don't worry. Actually, I just wanted you to take photos with me and die together. But in such a situation, I felt that you were safe and sound. Looking at me in a sorry state, I suddenly felt unbalanced. I want to see you in the same situation as me. I want to see you face the same situation as me. I want to know what you will do in this situation." Chapter 1232. After hearing the other party's words, Dustless immediately felt that he was in danger. Facing such a situation, Dustless looked at the other party vigilantly. He wanted to know what the other party was planning to do. In such a situation, Dustless speculated in his heart that it was very likely that the other party wanted to do an experiment on him, and then turn him into a monster like him. In this way, it could balance the other party's psychology. Dustless wasn't willing to do this. After all, he had a life in his heart. Why should he let the other party ruin it? Why should he passively follow the other party's wishes? Therefore, Dustless directly showed his resistance, and said to the black-robed man in front of him, "If you have the ability, then come at me. If you don't, then you'll have to endure my attacks. I also want to know who is stronger between the two of us, and who will be the final victor." After Wu Chen said this, the black-robed man didn't seem to care much about it. He continued to attack Wu Chen, and his attacks seemed to be more ferocious. At the same time, Wu Chen could feel that the black-robed man was indeed injured, which explained one thing. The chain was indeed the black-robed man's weakness. If the chain was injured, the black-robed man would also be injured. However, under such a situation, the black-robed man's injuries weren't that serious. In other words, the black-robed man's body could completely withstand these injuries. Therefore, the black-robed man didn't have any problems with these things. Therefore, in the face of such a situation, the black-robed man was still able to attack him. In such a situation, Dustless looked at the black-robed man vigilantly. He saw the black-robed man attacking him again. This time the black-robed man didn't use the chain. Instead, he took out a weapon that Dustless had never seen before. When Dustless looked at the weapon again, there was a slight shock in his eyes. He didn't expect such a situation to happen. The moment the weapon appeared, Dustless felt that his previous speculation might be wrong. This weapon was the black-robed man's real lethal weapon. As for the weapon, it was the most important factor that affected the black-robed man. Previously, he said that the black-robed man's weakness was the black-robed man's wrong guess. In such a situation, Dustless directly narrowed his eyes. He was thinking about what he should do now. If the black-robed man could turn the situation around, he would be in a very disadvantageous situation. Dustless went over and saw what kind of weapon was in the other party's hand. It was completely small, but it was a little longer than a dagger. If it was compared to a sword, it was really a little strange. It seemed like a weapon that was deliberately made. When the dagger appeared, the black-robed man seemed to be caressing it very leisurely. However, there was a hint of disgust in his eyes. In the end, his expression was very complicated. In such a situation, Dustless looked at the black-robed man with vigilance. Soon, the black-robed man directly attacked Dustless without any other actions. In such a situation, Dustless directly endured the other party's attack. Under such a situation, the Tang saber also reflected what it felt to Dustless. "Master, his weapon is really special. It doesn't feel like an ordinary artifact. As for why it's special, I can't say. However, if it hurts you, then it's very likely that it will cause some problems to your wound. So Master must be careful, don't let it hurt you." In such a situation, Dustless was also very careful and vigilant. He also understood that this was what he should do at this moment. While Dustless was dealing with the black-robed man's attack, he wanted to use this opportunity to let his Tang saber have a head-on collision with the black-robed man's strength. He wanted to see if there would be a good result. In the end, there were many collisions between the black-robed man and the black-robed man. However, the black-robed man's weapon was more powerful. Even after colliding with the black-robed man's Tang saber, there weren't too many injuries. The black-robed man's weapon was still smooth and there weren't any nicks. The relationship between the black-robed man and the black-robed man was very special. In such a situation, the black-robed man's tang saber was stronger than other artifacts. Therefore, when he used the black-robed man's chain to collide with the black-robed man's weapon, there would be nicks on the chain. But now, when the black-robed man's tang saber collided with the black-robed man's weapon, there weren't any nicks on the black-robed man's weapon. In such a situation, Dustless sighed. He guessed that the black-robed man's relationship with the black-robed man was very deep. Therefore, even if he wanted to cause damage to the black-robed man, it would be difficult for him to do so. Dustless wouldn't give up so easily. The black-robed man was very surprised when the black-robed man saw that the black-robed man was unscathed. He narrowed his eyes and looked at Dustless. Then, he directly asked Dustless, "You're quite special. What's the relationship between the two of you and your divine artifact? Could it be that you have the same relationship as me? This is a bit interesting. After all, when I found my artifact, it could be said to be a forbidden technique. But where did you find it? You are just a new god." But facing such a question, Dustless was thinking about how to answer. He couldn't say that this was his artifact and there was no special situation at all. But in such a situation, the black-robed man wouldn't believe his words. Therefore, in such a situation, Dustless felt that the best thing to do was to remain silent and not say anything. Even if the black-robed man wanted to make a guess, he would just let the black-robed man make a guess. It wasn't a big problem for him. Chapter 1233. Under such circumstances, the black-robed man watched as Dustless fell into silence. He began to speculate about some things about Dustless in his heart, so he continued to interrogate him. "Dustless, it seems that you are stronger than I thought. In such a situation, there are still some things that I don't know about. You are really beyond my expectations." "That's right. Why don't you tell me something about yourself? If you tell me something nice, maybe I will change my mind." After listening to these words, Dustless was naturally unwilling to believe the black-robed man. After all, in such a situation, even if the black-robed man's words were good, it was very likely that the black-robed man would go back on his words and betray him. Therefore, Dustless didn't dare to believe him at all. The black-robed man in front of him didn't have any of these at all. He didn't give him any responsibility. He only had his own thoughts and interests. After all, he could disregard his identity as a god to make such a deep agreement with a savage. This wasn't a big deal. After all, every god had their own personal preferences. This wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing was that the black-robed man in front of him still went astray after discovering the problem. He put himself in danger for a divine artifact and a savage. When he found that there was no turning back, the first thing he thought of was not to ask for other solutions, but to solve this problem himself. Eventually, when things got worse, he would use people and some animals to do experiments. His actions completely showed that he didn't put his identity in his eyes, nor did he put the people in his territory who trusted him in his eyes. He only had himself in his heart. He was a very selfish god. Dustless thought that perhaps the black-robed man in front of him could no longer be considered a god. After all, some of his actions didn't deserve the title of a god. In such a situation, Dustless was also thinking about how to refute the black-robed man and delay him. This way, he could fight for more chances of survival. After thinking for a while, Dustless directly said to the black-robed man in front of him, "I don't have anything else to say. You can be whatever you think of me. After all, you're so smart. You should be able to guess a little about my identity. So what's the difference if I say it or not? After all, don't you already have guesses in your heart?" After hearing Dustless's words, the black-robed man smiled gently. But in the process of smiling, he still attacked Dustless fiercely. He said that he could chat with Dustless. However, in reality, he still continued to attack Wu Chun. This kind of behavior made it hard for people to believe every word he said. Dustless felt that his strength was constantly being consumed, but in the face of such a situation, he didn't dare to relax. After all, He couldn't let the black-robed man see that he was in a difficult situation. After all, the black-robed man would definitely think of ways to attack him and increase his strength when he was weak. So in such a situation, even if Dustless felt a little tired, he didn't dare to relax because he didn't know what would happen to him if he relaxed. So in such a situation, it was best to be careful. The black-robed man hoped that he didn't show any abnormalities at this moment, but Dustless felt that the black-robed man wasn't feeling that good either. At this moment he also felt some pressure in his heart. The battle between the two sides had been constantly colliding. In such a situation, Dustless was still in a disadvantageous position. The situation wasn't very optimistic. Faced with such a situation, the black-robed man could only execute a move with greater strength. In an instant, the divine weapons in his hands were aimed at Dustless at the same time. This attack required the chain to lock Dustless's range of existence, then continue to use other weapons to block other hiding routes. Finally, the black-robed man would launch the final attack himself. Dustless also noticed the black-robed man's intention. He wanted to dodge, but in the end he couldn't succeed. Such a situation gave Dustless a headache. The black-robed man's attack this time was obviously ruthless. It was to injure Xian in such a situation. There was really no other way. When the pure power erupted, Dustless had nowhere to hide. He could only be forced to be locked by her. In the end, Dustless could feel another dagger directly entering his heart. At that moment, he seemed to feel a huge pressure from his heart. At this moment, his body was still very uncomfortable. The pain in his heart and the domineering power began to spread from his heart. In such a situation, Dustless felt as if a steady stream of demon chi was pouring into his body. His pupils were a little shaken and unfocused. He stared straight at the black-robed man in front of him. Dustless now knew what the black-robed man's intention was. The black-robed man wanted to turn him into a monster that was neither human nor ghost. Dustless wanted to resist and use the pure power of faith in his body to resist, but the effect was still a little weak. This made Dustless feel a little heartache. Because his power of faith seemed to be directly locked, he couldn't use it well. Under such a situation, he couldn't resist the black-robed man very well. The black-robed man looked at Dustless and said with a smile, "I advise you not to waste your efforts. The older the ginger, the spicier it is. If you want to play with me, then I can only say that you are not very good at it. In the process of fighting with you, I've already secretly done something." Chapter 1234. After Dustless heard these words, he was very surprised. He didn't expect that the other party would still be able to do something to his body under the intense collision between weapons. He didn't expect this at all. Dustless wanted to say something, but he was already surrounded by pain all over his body. Even if he wanted to say something, it was still an unbearable situation. Such a situation also made him very distressed. At this moment, the black-robed man also increased the strength of his hands. In such a situation, he directly continued to speak to Dustless. "I know that you have a lot of speculations about me in your heart. I also know that in such a situation, you may think that I didn't do a good job. You may think that I'm incompetent, but you can't deny my previous achievements because of what I'm doing now." At this moment, Dustless had already felt that the demon aura in his body was in a very bad situation. It was sweeping around and destroying everything around him. These things made Dustless feel pain. His entire body at this moment felt that the bad power began to spread directly to his limbs. Dustless could clearly hear what the black-robed man was saying, because every time he was distracted, the other party would always inject demon aura into his body and cause him excessive damage, causing him to instantly wake up due to the pain. Facing such a situation, Dustless didn't know what to say for a while. He could only say that the other party was cruel and made him go through all this. Under such a situation, the black-robed man in front of him spoke to Dustless instead. "It's painful, right? I was also in great pain back then. After experiencing all these things and situations, I don't feel any regret. After all, no matter what, I feel that even if I were to go back in time, I would still do the same." At this moment, Wu Chen's strength began to dissipate slowly. His whole body was in a state of powerlessness, which made people feel helpless. Dustless could only slowly listen to the black-robed man's words in his ear. He knew that the black-robed man was admiring him losing his vitality bit by bit under such a situation. His body was completely occupied by demon aura bit by bit. I want to look at you carefully. I want to see your current situation and the changes that are happening to you at this moment, because I'm really curious about you. I really want to know what's so special about you. You're different from other people. I've already noticed this a long time ago. In such a situation, I've always wanted to know what's so special about you, but I didn't have the chance to study it. After hearing these words, Dustless couldn't help but laugh at the black-robed man in his heart. You want to explore the mysteries of my body? How can it be so simple? After all, the mysteries of my body shouldn't be fully explored by anyone in this world. Therefore, Dustless didn't panic at all. Dustless didn't say these words out loud. After all, he was now unable to speak because of the power in his body. Another reason was that under such a situation, he didn't know how to explain it to the black-robed man. Sometimes, the black-robed man might not necessarily believe what he said, because sometimes it was really too unbelievable. In April, Dustless wouldn't reveal his secret, he would only hide it in his heart. The black-robed man didn't expect Dustless to respond in such a situation. So he just made his own guesses bit by bit. Then, he looked at the black demon aura spreading continuously on Dustless's body. At this moment, Dustless felt that his body no longer belonged to him. It was as if he had become someone else. In such a situation, it was very bad. Dustless was now thinking, if he wasn't so confident at that time, if he returned to that moment, would his situation be different now? However, after thinking about these possibilities, Dustless quickly stopped thinking about them because they were completely meaningless. The black-robed man admired the demonization of Dustless's body bit by bit. When Dustless's body was completely demonized, only his head was left. The black-robed man laughed. The black-robed man carefully looked at Dustless's body that was wrapped in demon aura. It was he who once again ridiculed him. You can't imagine it now, can you? Your entire body is now wrapped in demonic chi, just like how you saw me in my other state. However, I reckon that you probably can't imagine it either. It's really a pity. Dustless couldn't know what he looked like now, but in fact he could imagine it. After all, it wasn't like he hadn't seen this situation before. Dustless felt that his body no longer belonged to him. He was completely numb. In the face of such a situation, Dustless was thinking about what he should do next. If his body was demonized and he really became like the black-robed man, then what should he do? Should he just sit there and wait for death? Then he would definitely not be reconciled. He wouldn't just sit there and wait to be captured. If his body really encountered those changes and provoked those stimuli, then under such circumstances, he would definitely lose everything and hand over everything to those powerful masked gods. Then in such a situation, he would let them see if they could think of a way for him. If they couldn't and wanted to hurt him, then he would think of other ways to deal with it. Chapter 1235. Kurosaki Ichigo and the rest were shocked and angry. Dustless didn't treat them as humans at all. It was like watching a monkey perform. How could they not be angry? Wu Chen simply treated them as animals to please. What kind of humiliation was this? Everyone, let's attack together. Anyway, this guy has already shed all pretense of cordiality. He won't let us go easily. Ishida Yulong's two arms were like black holes, attracting a large amount of Reiki. In an instant, the Reiki condensed into a crystal-clear bow and arrow. Moreover, there were countless arrows that emitted cold light. Really? It's this kind of weak attack again. Who do you think I am? Dustless curled his lips in disdain. In an instant, he became dispirited. Originally, he wanted to play with this group of people. However, when he saw such a weak attack, his interest disappeared. You this bastard. Ishida Yulong was choked by Dustless's words. This could be said to be one of his most powerful moves. However, Dustless's sloppy attitude didn't respect him at all. This was a disguised form of belittling and naked contempt. Whoosh! Whoosh! Tens of thousands of bows and arrows shot out in unison. There was no way to dodge, no way to escape. Boom, boom, boom. The moment they came into contact with Dustless's body, the arrows flashed brightly. It was as if they had come to the surface of the sun in an instant. Then the earth shook and the mountains shook. The intense explosion eroded the body. Even the captain was seriously injured. Success! Inoue Oriheim cried with joy. Dustless gave her a fatal pressure. It was extremely difficult for her to breathe. Every second that Dustless lived in this world, her spirit was on the verge of collapse. How success? Are you kidding me? Find out what kind of mission is in front of you. The large cluster of flames disappeared, revealing Dustless's body. His whole body was still burning in flames. However, his voice came from the flames, indicating that he was fine. The scene was extremely terrifying. It was enough to shock anyone. Dustless's head was still burning in flames, but he was completely fine. The most shocking thing was that Dustless, whose head was burning in flames, often had a teasing smile on his face. All of you, get out of the way. Leave this guy to me. T-Tiger stepped in front of Ishida Yulong and Inoue Oriheim. A strange arm extended from his right arm. It was strange and filled with a special evil aura. This power. It seems like the power of Su. You, a mere human, can cross the boundary of race and obtain the power of Su. Not bad. Worthy of praise. But that's all. Dustless glanced at T-Tiger in surprise. Then he became calm again. When he looked at T-Tiger again, he found that the guy had disappeared. I didn't tell you to start and you attacked without permission. Where are your morals? Dustless looked around and complained. You don't know how to follow the rules at all. Boom, boom, boom. The back of Dustless's head trembled. A strong and powerful fist hit Dustless. Because the power was too strong, the air was filled with the danger of suffocation. Aw. I gave you a chance to sneak attack, but your performance is too troublesome. Dustless turned his head and glanced at T-Tiger behind him. His Zanpakuto swept out. Your performance is over. I don't have much time. It's time to change. The weak cold light turned into an overbearing slash, and T-Tiger was easily destroyed by the explosive force. Pucci. A living person was cut in half by Dustless. Tiger. The mournful scream made people twitch. Looking closely, it was Inoue Oriheim and Ishida Yuryu with red eyes. Of course, there was also Shinozaki Ichigo. But even a cheat has its limits. Against Dustless, Shinozaki Ichigo was destined to die here. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The black crescent moon light was slanted, and the places it passed by were dead silent. Under this destructive momentum, everything that blocked it was as fragile as snow. Getsuga Tensho. The black moonlight magnified again, covering the layers of void, tearing a huge crack visible to the naked eye. Instead of calling it a slash, it was more like a crescent moon-shaped black hole attacking. Because everywhere Shinozaki Ichigo slashed, everything turned into fragments, revealing the abyss of the universe. Yawn. Yawning lazily, Dustless gradually became sleepy. He said impatiently, Shinozaki Ichigo, let's end the grudges of the past today. Although I killed your parents, your friends, and will kill you soon, your two sisters and I have no grudges. So let me help you take care of them. Pucci. Hearing this, Shinozaki Ichigo's lungs churned, and he spat out a mouthful of blood uncontrollably. He glared at Dustless with fire in his eyes and shouted angrily, My parents are yours, you bastard! Some people like to die, so I can only reluctantly send them off. Wu Che shrugged helplessly. Then his gaze fell on Ishida Yuryu and he said bluntly, Your father too. I found him an eyesore, so I sent him to heaven to meet his deceased wife. The two of you should thank me properly. Shinozaki Ichigo and Ishida Yuryu were trembling with anger. Their eyes turned red, and they were filled with violent hostility. Their murderous gazes were locked on Dustless. TSK, I sent your father to heaven to meet his deceased wife, and they were happy. But you two bastards actually pointed your swords at me. You're worse than pigs and dogs. Chapter 1236. Shinozaki Ichigo and Ishida Yuryu felt a chill down their spine. Looking at Dustless's cold eyes, Their hearts were about to jump out of their bodies. As the saying goes, killing someone is as easy as nodding your head to the ground. However, when it came to Dustless, this saying was obviously too weak. With just a thought, he could crush an entire world. With such unparalleled strength, no one could even muster up the will to resist. The worst thing was Dustless's exaggerated identity, the Spirit King. Killing him would cause the entire world to collapse. They couldn't kill him at all. Otherwise, they would be digging their own graves. Crack, crack. Just then, the void exploded and a few figures came out from it. Captain Jingle, Captain Soifon, and Dustless frowned as he looked at the figures that came out from the realm crossing gate. When he saw the two young girls, his interest was piqued. He smiled at Shinozaki Ichigo and teased, "They are your sisters, Shinozaki Shuri and Shinozaki Yuko. When I killed Shiba Ishin, I promised him that I would take care of his two daughters. Don't even think about it. I will never hand my sisters over to you." Shinozaki Ichigo's tone was filled with madness. His entire body was emitting a frightening aura. That crazy gaze that seemed to want to drag everyone down with him was extremely intimidating. Even Uno Hanaretsu, who was swept by it, frowned slightly. "Captain Jingle, why aren't you bringing them over?" Dustless said lazily as he hooked his finger at Jingle Shunshui. However, Jingle Shunshui was indifferent. He looked at Dustless with a complicated gaze. He took a deep breath and said, "Without a doubt, since you are the Spirit King, you are the one I am absolutely loyal to. However, before that, I have a question to ask. Did you have anything to do with Fugitake's death?" After he finished speaking, Jingle Shunshui stared at Dustless. He was completely different from his usual carefree self. His eyes were sharp. As long as Dustless was lying, he would be able to tell. "It is indeed you." Jingle Shunshui felt as if he was struck by lightning. His body trembled violently. He was usually calm and composed, but now he was panting heavily. At first, he felt that there was something wrong with Yukitake Jushiru's death. It happened so suddenly, and the deaths of several captains were too strange. However, because Wuchen was the head captain at that time, he couldn't investigate to the end. "So what? What are you going to do?" Wu Chun, who had completely shed all pretenses of cordiality, was too lazy to say more. He shook the sharp sword in his hand. His meaning was self-evident. "Do you still need to say it?" Hearing this, Shunsui immediately pulled out his Zanpakuto, and his spiritual pressure rolled as he said hoarsely, "The entire Soul Society knows about my relationship with Fugitake. Now that he has been killed by you, we will not rest until one of us is dead." Naturally, Puff, S's Shunshui felt. SSS he felt. S's and Felt's felt. S-to was to he felt. SSS his. Was, S's heart's heart, he's. To kill. To die. His's. Fight to the death. Sorry you don't deserve it. Hado 54, Waste Flame. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. A round flame flew out like a flying saucer. Although it was only the 54th Hado, Jingle Shunshui, who was seriously injured by Dustless, had no extra strength to resist. Boom boom boom, the flame engulfed Jingle Shunshui, and the high temperature melted everything. When the flame dissipated, Jingle Shunshui was also destroyed. Seeing this scene, Kurosaki Ichigo and Ishida Yulong were both unwilling. The so-called captain-level Shinigami was just an ordinary human in front of them. Holy destruction arrow. In the distant sky, countless cold lights suddenly came. All of them were arrows. It was a unique attack of Quincy, but the one who attacked was not Ishida Yulong. Silver Wheel Reincarnation Explosion. A majestic sword blade storm emerged, instantly disintegrating the incoming arrows as if they were nothing. "You are finally here, there is Havoc." His sight was fixed on the figure in a cloak in the distance. His eyes were like torches, and his deep and raging red eyes were majestic. "Of course." Havoc smiled confidently and said calmly, "You can kill Yamamoto, but you can't do anything to me. Without enough confidence, I won't come out." A grin appeared on the corner of Havoc's mouth. He could feel the deadly pressure, but his expression did not change. His deep eyes were extremely gloomy and cold. "Bring him out for me. Let this new Spirit King take a look." Dustless didn't say anything. He knew Habakkuk's character. He would never do something he wasn't confident in. If he dared to come out and seek death, it meant that he had a life-saving trump card. Ka ka ka. Bursts of white light swept across the void and transformed into a door. Following that, two bound and suppressed figures stepped out from within. You want to use them to threaten me? You are really despicable. Dustless said expressionlessly. There was no anger or sadness. His unchanging expression was very straightforward. The two people who were caught turned out to be Rukia and Nero. Habakkuk's heart couldn't help but tighten. Dustless's calmness was not right. This was one of the annoying methods he used to threaten Dustless. He didn't expect to be able to threaten In Zicheng, but he should at least show some worry. Do you really think I dare to kill them? Habakkuk's heart flashed with a ruthless light. He cast a strange look at the people who bound Rukia and Nero. It was obvious that he wanted to kill one of them first. Bang bang bang. A few clouds of bloody light suddenly exploded in the sky. Before they could kill Rukia and Nero, some of Habakkuk's subordinates inexplicably exploded and died. You can kill them without doing anything? Habakkuk said in shock. Jagram beside him was also confused. Dustless really didn't do anything. Two idiots. Dustless's heart was filled with disdain. He activated the shadow door of the Tomb of Reincarnation, border prison, and surrounded Habakkuk and Jagram. Chapter 1237. Habakkuk couldn't help but shrink his neck as he stared at Dustless's cold expression. His eyes couldn't help but look towards the horizon. He had a feeling that there was an invisible guillotine staring at him. Perhaps, as long as Dustless gave the order, he would be decapitated along with his corpse. You are still too far away. After staring at Habakkuk for a few seconds, Dustless said such a shocking sentence. Is that so? Suppressing the strange feeling in his heart, Habakkuk put on a fake smile and said, Then let me have a taste of the head captain's trust. I don't have time. Dustless didn't give Habakkuk a chance. He planned to destroy him in the shortest time possible. Immediately, he used one of his strongest moves. His body was covered in emerald light as Dustless changed into another form. With a casual wave of his hand, a ray of light covered the sky. Golden Wheel Reincarnation Explosion. A huge light sword appeared in Dustless's hand and expanded without limit. 10 meters, 100 meters, 1,000 meters, 10,000 meters, 100,000 meters. Furthermore, it was still growing without end, with no end in sight. Poochie. Crack. Boom. 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 All kinds of destructive horns intertwined. Any living or non-living thing that came in contact with the light was crushed by the light. Poochie. Kurosaki Ichigo was split in half. Poochie. Ishida Yulong was the same. Another two Poochie. Ear-piercing sounds rang out. Looking up, there were two more halves of corpses falling down. Looking down, it was Habakkuk and his number one lackey Jagram. Boom. 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 The light slanted down and landed on the ground, easily tearing it apart and splitting it into a huge canyon. At this moment, Dustless exclaimed. Looking at the horrifying Soul Society, he turned to Unohana Retsu and explained, Sorry, I just swallowed a Spirit King not long ago. My overall strength has increased. I didn't pay attention and cut Soul Society in half. If apologies are useful, everyone's dreams will come true. Unohana Retsu scolded in annoyance. She then smiled helplessly. Looking at the scarred Soul Society, her eyes couldn't help but dim. Hee. Seeing Unohualai's sadness, Dustless laughed in his heart. He had once told Unohualai that he would take her away, but she was unwilling to do so. Therefore, Dustless had no choice but to destroy the entire Soul Society. Of course, this was definitely not as simple as destroying Soul Society. Hueco Mundo and the modern world all had some kind of connection. The destruction of one side would inevitably lead to the collapse of the entire world. In other words, it was impossible for Unohua to continue living in Soul Society, or rather, in this world. Aren't the two of you celebrating a little too early? A hoarse and gloomy voice could be heard, followed by the appearance of Habakkuk. He didn't die. This must be his ability. omniscient and omnipotent. Dustless sighed in his heart. Looking at Habak, his eyes were filled with passion. The new double pupils in his eyes looked very disgusting and uncomfortable, but there was one thing that could not be denied. This ability was heaven-defying. He can see the future, and all known skills are useless against him. Maybe he used omniscient and omnipotent to see the future and understand my moves, so Golden Will reincarnation explosion is useless against him. Dustless pondered and understood that it was Habak's ability. This world, there are so many invincible abilities. Dustless sighed from the bottom of his heart. Whether it was Hogyoku Aizen or Habak, they were all such people. Shinozaki Ichigo was also one of them. Almost all of them had an immortal body. You still want to heal? Ishida Yurong is already dead. Since you value your ties so much, you can die with him. Looking at Shinozaki Ichigo on the ground, Dustless's expression was cold. He gathered a majestic power in his palm, and with a wave of his hand, the void rapidly distorted. Ka. The sky cracked, and a black hole appeared. Dustless's palm released a majestic gravitational force and grabbed Shinozaki Ichigo's entire body. 10,000 mammoth heavens pull. Dustless controlled Shinozaki Ichigo's body with both of his hands. He aimed at the black hole in the sky and threw Shinozaki Ichigo into it. To some people, drifting alone in the depths of the universe and living without a goal was worse than death. Bastard, let go of me. Shinozaki Ichigo, who had regained his senses, roared. His tone was filled with endless hatred. He locked his gaze on Shinozaki Yuko and Shinozaki Shaylee and said, "They are my only family left. You can't." Hee. Dustless suddenly floated in front of Shinozaki Ichigo and showed an ambiguous smile. He looked very evil and promised, your sister, I'm here. Don't worry. I'm going to kill you." Hearing this, Shinozaki Ichigo was furious. He thought to himself that it was because of you that he was worried. You can live in your sister's shadow forever. Glancing at Shinozaki Ichigo, Dustless gathered a high-density light under his feet. Light speed kick. A merciless kick flew out and hit Shinozaki Ichigo, kicking him into the abyss of the universe. He would live on like an insignificant ant. After dealing with you, it's time for me to move to another place. Dustless shifted his gaze and looked at Habak, who was struggling at death's door. Habak was his last enemy. After killing him, he would be able to leave with Uno Hanaretsu and step into a new world. There was no need to waste his time in a worthless world. He raised his finger gently. An array of golden light engulfed Habak. Chapter 1238. Habak wasn't Shinozaki Ichigo. Their strength was on a completely different level. After all, he was also a part of the Spirit King's body. His strength was worlds apart from Shinozaki Ichigo's. Don't compare me to Shinozaki Ichigo. I'm not an idiot like him. Habak said proudly. A cold light flashed in his dark red eyes, and a murderous glint flickered in them. Those overlapping eyes were extremely disgusting, but it was Habak's greatest trump card against Dustless. You're actually the same as him. There's no difference. No, you're not even comparable to Shinozaki Ichigo. Staring at Habak, Dustless shook his head and praised. Shinozaki Ichigo might be a simpleton, but at least he has the tenacity to fight and not give up. You, on the other hand, are just a clown hiding behind the scenes, a piece of trash who only dared to make a move today. This is called enduring humiliation for the greater good. Habak argued, his face red. However, Dustless ignored him. He stared at Jugram with a gloomy gaze. What are you trying to do? Seeing that there was something wrong with Dustless's eyes, Habak felt that something was wrong. Dustless's thirsty gaze was piercing his soul. Could it be that this guy wants to? Realizing that something was wrong, Habak's body turned cold. He suddenly guessed Dustless's terrifying intentions. Just as he was about to rush to Jugram's side, it was already too late. A red barrier rose from the ground, binding Habak within it. 6 Crimson Suns formation. Habak within the barrier was furious. He gathered all his strength and attacked the barrier. Boom, boom, boom. He raised his sword high, and with a raise of his hand, he unleashed a near-invincible attack. A hole was cut in the sky, but it couldn't even shake the barrier that was as thin as a cicada's wing. Everything was in vain. Just watch quietly. You're next. There's a Habak. Dustless glanced at Habak coldly, then landed beside Jugram. The latter was expressionless, and he was very quiet. He was no different from a rock. Looks like you don't have any last words. Jugram remained silent, and Dustless didn't waste any words either. His body was like a hole, and countless drops of black liquid flowed out, flying towards Jugram in liquid form. This is... Jugram's face darkened slightly, revealing a cautious look as he said, "This is the power of a spirit king." "You actually know him?" This time it was Dustless's turn to be shocked. Stunned, he said, "You actually know that this is the power of a spirit king?" Even a captain-level Grim Reaper might not know what this thing was. Now that Jugram knew its name and origin, it could only mean one thing. "Looks like it's just as I guessed. You're also a part of the Spirit King's body." "Oh no, all of you are also a part of my power." Dustless smiled. This would explain why Jugram knew that this was the power of a Spirit King. "Since you know that this is the power of the Spirit King, then quickly become a part of my power." Dustless's voice fell, and the pitch-black Spirit King on the ground suddenly increased in speed. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Naturally, Jugram would not wait for death. With a wave of his hand, he sent out several powerful slashes. However, the slash that gave him high hopes brought back great disappointment. The pitch-black Spirit King torrent was like rubber, extremely tough. Not only did the huge slash not tear apart the Spirit King torrent, it even bounced back Jugram's slash. Damn it. Even with Jugram's temperament, a sinister look flashed across his face as he hurriedly waved his blade again. Boom, boom, boom. With a swing of his hand, the slashes that were bounced back turned into ashes. They were completely destroyed by Jugram, causing a large amount of dust to fly up. Phew, that was a close call. Jugram heaved a sigh of relief. Spirit particles surged, and just as he was about to disperse the surrounding smoke and dust, the black light that filled the sky fell down. A close call? Are you an idiot? It's already game over. Without giving Jugram a chance to refute, the flames engulfed him. Heavenly reflection. Caught off guard, Jugram was engulfed by the black flames. His miserable cries pierced through the lazy white clouds in the sky and spread to every corner of Soul Society. "If I say it's over, then it's over." Dustless chuckled and controlled the Spirit King to move towards Jugram. Very quickly, Jugram evaporated. His body seemed to have melted and turned into the same Spirit King's power. Gotcha! A gap appeared in the 6 Crimson Yang formation. Dustless stepped into it and stared at Jugram, who was in despair. His body felt light. Everything would end here. Chapter 1239. Habak felt a chill run down his spine. He originally thought that his immortal body was invincible. Who would have thought that he would encounter such a super cheating device that directly crushed Jugram without even having the slightest chance to retaliate? The confidence in his heart was easily shattered. "Kill you and Jugra? How is that possible? I will never do such a stupid thing that will only cost me a lot." Dustless shook his head violently like a rattle drum and said, "You and Jugram are nourishment for me to become stronger. Kill the two of you. How is that possible? Wouldn't it be better for you to completely fuse with me?" A single sentence sent Habak to hell. His entire body instantly turned cold. No wonder Dustless didn't directly kill Jugram, but directly absorbed him. In a daze, Habak saw that the black pearl embedded in Dustless's chest was shining even brighter, and the power of the Spirit King was also becoming more abundant. "I definitely can't let this go. Even if I die, I will drag this brat to hell with me." Habak roared hysterically. He hated Dustless to the bone. If it wasn't for Dustless, his painstakingly planned plan wouldn't have failed. If it wasn't for Dustless, he might be standing in Dustless's perspective. The perspective of a god, experiencing the power that could shatter the heavens and shatter the earth with a raise of his hand. Boom, boom, boom. The spiritual particles in Habak's body surged, and his body continued to expand. 1 meter, 10 meters, 20 meters, 100 meters. His body continued to expand until he completely became a giant that could hold up the sky. This ability to expand seems to be the ability of his personal guards. How did this old brat get it? Speaking of which, why did Habakkuk's personal guards disappear? Strange. Or has this old brat already given all of his personal guards too? His gaze once again focused on Habakkuk's huge body. Dustless suddenly realized that the spiritual particles in his body were unimaginably strong, and a certain thought in his mind was proven. This old brat must have personally killed his personal guards after reviving them, and seized all of their abilities. TSK. What a ruthless heart. But I still have to thank you, because your abilities will all be mine in the end. Dustless was overjoyed. He was determined to get Habakkuk. This old fellow was a delicious cake. Inside the 6 Crimson Suns formation, Dustless's spiritual pressure increased. Boom boom boom. Whenever Habakkuk moved, the earth would tremble and the mountains would shake. Mountains and rivers would shatter, and boundless tremors would spread out. Die, you insignificant worm. A Habakkuk opened its mouth and said disdainfully. It raised its big foot and charged towards Dustless. Poochie. However, the tragic thing was that before his foot landed, Habakkuk let out a cry of pain and was crushed by the oncoming saber light. His huge body was instantly reduced to ashes. As if it felt that it wasn't cruel enough, the chakra in Dustless's body began to go berserk. His eyes were focused on Habakkuk's enormous body. After a while, the surging eye power began to twist, and the black flames instantly swallowed Habakkuk. Tens ho! You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.